Well, hello and welcome to this Eureka City Council meeting here on March 3rd. We're glad you're all here. Nice to see everyone. We will open this meeting with the land acknowledgement. The land that Eureka rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Jirujiji. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments removed the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the land and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The city of Eureka acknowledged the Wiyot community, their elders both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates the city's commitment to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. And if we could get a roll call, please.
Councilmember Castellano,
Here.
Councilmember Moulton,
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Here.
Councilmember Bauer,
Here.
Councilmember Contreras Deloche,
Here.
and Mayor Burgell.
Here. And would all who care to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And City Attorney Black, is there a report out of closed session?
Mayor, no reportable actions were taken in closed session.
Great, thank you. And in my mayor's announcement, I just have a couple of things. One of those things is it was brought to my attention last meeting. It's important that we let you know what commission seats are available for the city. So I'm going to go ahead and read those. And if you're interested, you can reach out to Pam Powell or Shannon Fazio here at the city. We have 2 seats on the Board of Appeals, 1 seat on Design Review, 2 seats on Economic Development, 2 on Historic Preservation, and 1 on our Transportation Safety Commission. And so if you're looking for a way to get involved in our city, we would love to have you. You can just come fill out an application and get started with that. And then 2 other things just as announcements. I want to remind everybody that this Sunday is the Foggy Bottoms Milk Run in Ferndale. So there's a 2-mile. You can take your kids. It's always a great time. They're 4-mile and a 10-mile. It starts at noon. And so it's always just great. They have chocolate milk at the end, which is super fun. And then the other thing is that for the last, I don't know, forever years, 14, I've been engaged and done the Perilous Plunge for the Discovery Museum. And this year, my team, the Redwood Coast Montessori team, won't be doing it. And so this is my challenge to our city council to jump in the bay, raise a little money, and support our kids. We're Team Joy of Kindness. We're with the President of Positivity, and we would love to have more team members. So if you're interested or any city employees would like to jump in the bay with us this year, we are happy to have you. There you go. And with that, we'll move on to presentations. And first up, we have the DHHS Community Health presentation with Deputy Director Sherlock. Welcome.
Aha, where it says push. All right. All right. We'll be presenting today on the Humboldt County's Community Health Assessment. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Brianna Sherlock, and I'm the Deputy Director for Public Health.
And hi, everyone. I'm Marion Strong, and I'm a Program Coordinator with Public Health.
We're glad you're here.
Okay, excellent. So tonight we will be covering what a community health assessment is, what Live Well Humboldt is, how everybody who lives in Humboldt can participate in the community health assessment, and we'll be discussing a little bit about our Live Well Humboldt data dashboard.
So to get us started, what is a community health assessment? A community health assessment is essentially the checkup for our entire community. It gives us a comprehensive picture of public health, what's working well, what things we need to face. We look at data that's reviewed from various sources, including cancer rates, prenatal care, and youth commercial tobacco use as a few examples. Data is also collected through surveys, interviews, and focus groups. The CHAS tells a story of our community health, highlighting conditions that help residents thrive and barriers that we can look at. It identifies our most important health issues and unmet needs and existing strengths that we can build on. The findings guide city leaders like yourselves, public agencies, community organizations, in understanding what residents truly need. It ensures decisions about programs, funding, and policies are grounded in real data rather than assumptions. The CHOP process brings together partners across sectors: healthcare, nonprofits, schools, businesses, and residents themselves. This collaboration helps ensure that programs and services reflect the lived experiences of people they're meant to serve. The CHOP also informs our community health improvement plan.
So if the CHA is like the community's checkup, the Community Health Improvement Plan, or the CHIP, is like the treatment plan for the entire community. So the CHIP uses the information from the CHA to set the goals. It looks at the data, what it's telling us, what our community's telling us about what our top health priorities are in our community. It works to align resources in our community across sectors so that we're working collectively towards the shared health goals that our community has set. Historically, our CHA and CHIP have been done on a 5-year cycle, but going forward, they will be done on a 3-year cycle. And this enables us to work more closely with other community organizations that also do these kinds of assessments, like Providence, Partnership, and Behavioral Health. And although there is a major update and deep dive into the data once every 3 years, these are living documents which are looked at regularly by public health and the other organizations and community members that participate in Live Well Humboldt, and it's available to our community at large as well. So in our last community health improvement plan, the priority areas which were identified by our community were suicide prevention, substance use, housing instability and homelessness, and healthy beginnings and adverse childhood experiences. For our next community health improvement plan, our priority areas may look similar or they may be different.
So what is Live Well Humboldt? Live Well Humboldt is a collaborative partnership made of local, tribal, and governmental organizations working together to support the health and well-being of everyone in Humboldt County. It brings multiple sectors to the same table so that we're working together instead of in silos. The main goal of Live Well Humboldt is to help all residents live healthier, happier lives in Humboldt County. The group focuses on shaping resources, programs, and services that support individuals, families, and communities across the county. By working collectively, partners can address health challenges more effectively and build on strengths that are already present in our community. The Live Well Humboldt works on 3 major components: the Community Health Assessment, the Community Health Improvement Plan, and the Community Health Data Dashboard, which offers accessible, up-to-date data on health indicators. It helps leaders, organizations, and residents track progress and understand emerging trends. We'd like to recognize the Live Well Humboldt Steering Committee members for their dedication to improving community health. This includes your fellow Councilmember Castellano serving as the Executive Director for the Inc. People. Thank you.
So as Marian said, the Live Well Humboldt Community Health Data Dashboard makes data so that it's accessible for our community. Are we able to pull up the website, or is that too tricky? If not, it's okay. I didn't put a link in, or actually on the next slide, I believe there's a link. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Thank you. So this is the Live Well Humboldt Data Dashboard. Right now, as you can see on the homepage or the landing page, there's a link to the Community Health Assessment Survey. So anybody who is interested in taking the survey, we encourage them to visit this page. There's a QR code also in the presentation. Would you mind clicking on Explore Data and select Data Category? selected data by category. Sorry. Second one on the list. Perfect. And then maternal and infant health. So this is an example of how some of the data shows up on this website. So we publish, for example, reports here, the key health indicators like Marian was talking about. If we scroll down just a little bit, you can see those. And so we hope that this information is helpful for the community, both for organizations that might be applying for funding, as well as just community members who are interested in knowing what's happening in our community. As Marian said, what are the things that are making us healthy and what are the things that we can work on improving? All right, can we flip back to the presentation, please? Thank you. So we invite everybody here today to take part in the Community Health Assessment Survey. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and it helps us build a healthier Humboldt. It asks questions about perceived barriers in the community, strengths that our community has that we can build upon, and our goal is to have at least 10% of Humboldt County complete the survey so that we can really get a look at what is happening across our community. So please feel free to share the link with friends, family, colleagues who live in Humboldt County. Encourage them to take the time to take the survey. Everybody who takes the survey will also be entered to win a $30 Visa gift card. So there's a little bit of an incentive there. And we just really appreciate everybody's time that's able to take the survey and everybody who's here listening tonight for our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Castellano?
Thank you. Thanks for being here. And thank you for all your work on this. I'm curious in terms of, the city of Eureka sharing this survey out. Seems like that would be really useful. Do you also have like the QR code on, I could imagine like at our child care center, like there could be a stack of cards or, just things like that where people, or at the Adorni Center or things like that. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have flyers, and then we'll also have graphics for social media. We're happy to provide you either with electronic copies or with hard copies, whatever would be most helpful for you all to help get it out into the community.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. For everything that goes into this, like this is a countywide survey. We would like to get as much feedback as we can countywide. If we were to really try and push this locally through the city of Eureka, would you be able to like disaggregate in a way that we might be able to look at it? Like what are the particulars for the city of Eureka? Could we look at it through census tracts, that type of thing?
We will be collecting demographic data, including zip codes. Oh, sorry. Like talking right to you. So we will be collecting demographic data, including zip codes. So we would be able to break down the data by areas of different sizes. So that would be something we would love to collaborate with.
That is something I would love to collaborate with you
are you
on.
a data geek too?
No, but I know how valuable it is. So yeah.
It is. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Any further questions? No. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing more. This moves us to Operation 101 Gateway with Commander LaFrance. Welcome.
Whichever it is for you, or good morning. So this actually will be probably the shortest presentation I ever had. It's only 5 slides. It's quick, short, and to the point, but it's informational. So over the past year and a half, or a little more than a year now, I took over patrol duties as a commander. We made some modifications, which the chief will talk about in our upcoming annual report. We have some really good data coming and good news about the department. We're looking at ways, though, we can keep improving the city overall. So not to steal the chief's thunder from his next presentation, but we really ramped up our traffic enforcement. We ramped up our proactivity levels, and we also reduced call service overall with our efforts. For this year, for 2026, one thing we want to focus on is the 101 corridor. So when you drive into the city, either from the north or from the south. You often will, you see a lot of traffic. You will often see trash inside the roadway. You'll see people that are in disarray on the sidewalks as well coming to the city. You'll see weeds on sidewalks, which is really a pet peeve of mine now because I notice it everywhere. And so we're looking at things of how we can address these issues for either people living in the city and or people visiting our city. So I'm going to go over 4 things today. First, purpose, why we're doing this, purpose, the why, the goals, and our strategies and support. Oh, there we go. All right, excellent. All right, so the purpose of this is really to get a coordinated, collaborative effort between the City of Eureka and our partners in the community to address the issues within the 101 corridor. So that primarily includes obviously Broadway, 4th and 5th, but also adjacent streets that are running east, west, north, and south that are immediately there that also impact 101. When we talk about the City of Eureka, it's not just EPD, it's also Public Works, it's code enforcement, it's going to be our economic development for messaging and community partners, Caltrans, CHP, and other community members and businesses as well because they take up most of the corridor. So the big why. So ongoing traffic issues. Even though we had a massive increase in traffic enforcement last year, we only lowered our traffic collisions by about 1% to 2% overall. So we know we have some really, really poor driving behavior in the city, which is probably caused by various behaviors. We know that we're going to heavily deal with those issues. But again, we have those ongoing traffic issues. Since 2020, we've had 10 fatal collisions. So 5 pedestrians, I think 3 bicycles, 1 vehicle versus vehicle, and 1 vehicle versus an object. And so for a city our size, 10 fatals on 1 corridor is not positive. So we need to change that. We got to look at the blight. So again, we're looking at weeds. We're looking at buildings in disarray, properties that aren't well kept. Then also the other issue is theft-related crimes. We have the mall, we have other businesses. Even though our theft rates are down, that's still a big issue for our businesses. And then just in general, disruptive behavior. So we see our folks that we work with CSET works with CARE, but again, their behavior is often unacceptable. It often creates a safety issue for the community and especially for traffic. And so these two things collide and it causes an issue. So those are some of the whys we're bringing this operation forward. So some of our goals, 1, reduce collisions. I'm not going to give you a percentage on this. I'll be happy with negative 1%. If we could drop by 1%, we'd be happy. But again, we like to see much, much bigger numbers than that. We do want to obviously work on reducing and removing blight. So that's where our partners with Public Works will come in and our compliance with our community partners and businesses to remove that blight, reduce theft-related crimes, and then reduce other disruptive behavior. And lastly, how we're going to do this. So if you have been noticing EPD officers out and about a lot more, there's actually not more of us. There's in the field more, and they're being as visible as possible. We're really trying to hotspot areas that have high crime, high density, high traffic, areas that we have problematic behavior. We are definitely increasing our visibility. One thing you'll also see is called a rear amber deterrent system that you'll see officers driving around daytime, nighttime with their rear ambers activated. Similar like you see at the mall with mall security, very similar. It can be, they can use it for a long period of time or they can do it intermittently to slow traffic down. As a person who drives into Eureka on 101, people try to drive by my car very fast, even though it's pretty clear it's a police car. Once you throw those rear ambers on, you quickly change behavior for people. So it is a system that's worked in other areas. There's some research on it, but again, we're gonna work on that as well. We're gonna try that, at least the rear amber deterrence. Focused traffic enforcement. We're already doing a lot more traffic enforcement than we did in 2024. The increase is 241%. So we just did under 9,000 traffic stops last year, just under 9,000. That's patrol only. Remember, no traffic units, just patrol. So we're going to focus a little bit more on Broadway and 4th and 5th. So again, these are areas where we have pedestrian fatalities, bike fatalities, vehicles that are having collisions. We are not going to prevent every single collision through enforcement, but we don't know what we don't know. So if we possibly, the chance of preventing 1 fatal collision, that for us is a huge benefit. But you're going to see a lot more focused enforcement on in the corridor. Outreach and engagement. So this is not only for EPD is not only officers in the daytime. It's systematic throughout every single watch. Typically in a daytime, there's 3 watches. Each watch has 1 sergeant plus 3 to 4 officers. So on nighttime, we're going to have our graveyards roll through the corridor. If people are camped out or some are along the sidewalk, we're going to do outreach with them. We're going to engage with them, offer services. On the flip side, we'll also refer them to care as needed and uplift. But on the flip side, if we're having problematic locations where people are unwilling to receive the help we're offering them, or they're unwilling to change their behavior, that's problematic, then we'll also use enforcement. And that's through trespass orders from businesses and private property we can use to address that as well. So we're really trying to balance compassion with accountability. But again, there are some folks that are just unwilling to comply with the societal norms, and we have to have an enforcement piece. That's just the reality of it. And then even going to jail will actually still offer people services on the back end to stop the problem, to solve the problem long term. Blight abatement, again, that'll be public works and code enforcement. They have some door hangers they're going to be sending out, educational information about their responsibility in regards to weed abatement and sidewalks. Again, we will also support that from a city as well, but primarily responsibility is back on those folks, and we'll be helping to remind them. Education, this will be economic development. They'll be doing education on social media and the website. So just letting people know about your responsibility is weed abatement, or manage the weeds in front of your business. If it's on the sidewalk, just take a minute and scrape it off and throw it away. And other forms of education as well. And then the big one we need is community buy-in and compliance. So we have to really connect with our businesses. My plan eventually, when I get a second, is to actually take Sergeant Ross from CSET, drive down Broadway, 4th and 5th, connect with some of the businesses, let them know what we're doing, encourage their support in this. It's not only beneficial for us as a city, but also for them as a business. Because if their business has a blight in front, it does not look welcoming. It is likely their business will suffer because of it. So that is all I have. Like I said, the shortest presentation I've ever had, and I can take any questions.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Moulton?
Thank you. And thank you for the brief presentation and for the work you're doing. I've definitely been getting feedback from constituents about seeing more, they're like seeing more cops out, or like seeing more enforcement, and people appreciating that, especially when it comes to traffic safety. And myself got pulled over the other day on Broadway. So they're definitely out there doing their jobs. I was curious specifically about blight abatement. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit more? What's are there carrots and sticks involved there? So say there's a very large shopping center along Harris, the bushes along the road are pretty much just packed with garbage. How does that work?
So for us, if we have the complaint, like that scenario, we'll go over to code enforcement to address, and then on the back end, we'll see what's causing the trash. Is it transits coming on the property? Is it just neighbors dropping trash off or throwing it there? And once we have that piece of it, then we can start the enforcement end of it as well to stop the behavior. Or say if it's private property, we can get a trespass letter. So if we do find people there, we can address the issue at hand. But the blight is the tricky part of this, because especially when if you drive down Broadway now, 4th and 5th, you'll see the weeds growing on the sidewalks. It's going to be pretty obvious to you, in some spots worse than others. But again, the responsibility will be the property owner of that.
So if a property owner has a bunch of garbage out front and they're just not responsive, is there where does that process go? I'm curious.
Code enforcement would be the next step, and then obviously they'll assess from there, try to get compliance. They really try to get voluntary compliance, just like we do. But once they hit that compliance route, they have their whole process to actually start addressing it from an accountability standpoint.
So meaning fines?
Not necessarily fines. If it gets to the point of it not being abated, we could abate it and then bill them for the cost of abatement.
I see.
That's a last resort. But the intent of this is to programmatically let everybody know that it's not only a benefit to the city, but it's a benefit to their business. And we're going to definitely emphasize that route, that this is, and if there's not much of a carrot, but the carrot is to enhance your business.
Thank you. No, absolutely. I appreciate you going to the answer to my question. But I do appreciate the conversation and the outreach piece of this, and hopefully just, pointing out to people that, hey, this is in fact your responsibility. We'll get them out there with the dustpans or the vinegar spray. Thank you.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear on the number that you'd put out there, over 9,000 traffic stops
Just
since
under.
24.
Yeah, we just last year alone we did just under 9,000 traffic stops. Which
Oh,
was
just
a-
last year alone.
Last year, so which was a 241% increase from 2024.
Right. I'm just curious, what kind of stops were these?
These are everything from speed to equipment violations to registration to pretty much if you are operating your vehicle in a major corridor, Harris, Henderson, HI, Broadway, 4th, 5th, Booner, and you have if there's a reason to pull you over, you're probably gonna get pulled over. So this does a couple things. One, it gets compliance with the issue, especially safety issues. We want to focus on traffic or on speed. That's one of the big ones. You'll see officers running radar a lot for safety. That's our primary one, safety violations. However, even small things like a registration, it's likely they're not going to get a citation. If they do, it's a fix a ticket. But also just the fact we're pulling someone over there for a lawful reason, we're making a contact with the individual. It's usually a very positive contact based on our complaints also went down from 2024. Even though our activity actually went up by 86%. But also the visibility. So we have, if we're stopped on Harris on a traffic stop, how many cars drive by us? And so that itself will slow traffic down as well. So it's not just that one stop we're trying to pick on that one driver. Obviously, it's an issue we have to address. We want them to drive safely, have their lights working, have their car registered and insured, not speed, not cut people off, not drive recklessly. But again, the visibility also, the whole community sees it, and a lot of people are impacted by it, and the community benefits in a much, much safer manner.
I mean, Ward 2 aside, are we seeing any of are we seeing any particular areas where it's just outside of the norm or particular hotspots?
No, constant complaints about H&I Street, so that's always a complaint. We've actually the direction from patrol, if you're doing 30 over in the city, you're going to go to jail. So plain and simple, unacceptable, reckless driving, you're going to jail. So we've seen 72, 76. Yes.
Oh, thank you for that
Sorry.
clarification.
That's how I understood.
I know, well,
it, so,
That was-
okay.
Except
That's a
for
little
the
much.
city manager. Yeah, if you're doing 30 miles over the speed limit, you're going to go to jail for reckless driving. Hands down.
hope so.
There's no reason to do 60 plus in the city, much less we've seen 70 plus in the city. So, but H&I have our freeways. I park on my way home. I drive down 8th Street, and people move and they fly. And so that's one place that we will set up officers with radar, LiDAR to pick people off. Those people are the ones usually getting cited for speed. We give a lot of warnings out. We only cite, I think, 16 or 20% of people we actually stop, so it's not very high. But again, the people we're citing are for usually excessive speed, and then some other rendition.
Yeah, I've seen the Facebook post, so thank you for being active on social media too. I'm curious what the demographics look like. Are they folks like 18 to 24? Are we talking about people older in their 30s, or is it just mixed? And
That would be in the RIPA data, so I'm not
Okay.
sure, and I'm not sure if that's accessible online yet. That's what every single stop that we make, we have to do a RIPA, so we have to put all the demographics are perceived with the demographic from everything from the gender to their sexual
Their
there's
gender.
there's
Gender, yeah.
their sexual preference. There's a ton of data that we are required by law. We're not kidding. It's required by law that we have to report this. So RIPA data, but that's all. It is all collected every single stop.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do you ask them their sexual preference?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Contreras Deloche. Sorry,
That threw me. I had a question as well, and they got me too. Councilmember Moulton, they did. They got me too. So the demographic might be middle-aged women. My tail light was out. That's all it was. Anyway, and right as we drove past, we said, "Oh look!" My husband said, "Oh look, Officer Arminio got somebody," and right as we turned the corner, they got us. So I appreciate how active you guys are, and I really appreciate the visibility. I appreciate the visibility on Facebook too. I think it means a lot to the community. The really dangerous driving is a really big problem here, and so I think that's really. This is one of those things that high visibility is making people feel safer. My question was, have you guys, and I'm sorry I missed a piece of this, are you guys tracking, is this having an effect on less accidents? Are we having less accidents, and do you know how much yet, if that's impacting?
Yeah, so last year we were, again, our overall collisions were reduced by 1.5 or 2%. So our collision rates are still not where they're still too high, despite all our efforts. That's why, we will continue doing enforcement. There's many reasons why, including reducing calls for service and crime. However, we have to change the driving behavior in the community. I've been to 47 states. I've lived all over the country, and the driving behavior here is the one key thing where, I was driving down H today, 8th Street past Carson Park, doing 30, and I see this guy come behind me. And again, I'm obviously in an unmarked, but California plates, giant antenna, spotlights, obviously a cop car, not even a thought, just 40 miles an hour plus past me. And here we are. Got to change the culture.
Yeah, I wonder what that's a conversation for another time, but I've kind of wondered what drives that too. I've lived all over as well, and there's only one other place I saw that kind of had wild and wacky traffic behavior, and that was Utah. And I haven't really seen it anywhere else at the level that it is here. So that's a conversation for another time, but I would love to know if you got any theories on that. So how we move forward that component of public safety.
Councilmember Castellano?
Thank you for this work. I'm curious, this kind of conversation, well, the traffic, but also the blight, has been coming up a lot in other circles, including Eureka Main Street. And then I know of a couple of other community groups and organizations that are working on kind of similar but slightly different efforts. And so I'm just curious, especially with the blight, I would love to, one, connect you with some other folks who are doing that kind of work, so there could be some coordination or collaboration or cross-pollination. But it would also be great, to come to Eureka Main Street, since that comes right through the corridor. Is that something that's on your radar, or is there a way that I can share this? I know you're super busy too, so.
Yeah, there's several groups I want to meet with still. Again, we're just we started this back in early January. It's kind of the idea behind this, and we kind of slow rolled it out until really this month. But we're definitely not into, we're not 100% with this yet. There's a lot of things still to do, and connect with those community partners like those groups would be perfect.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, there's every intention of bringing EPD as well as economic development to Chamber of Commerce, Henderson Marketing Association, Main Street, those agencies.
Great. Yeah, as someone who's now during the day will be located right on the corridor, already having conversations with the neighbors about what can we do to create more sense of place and public engagement along there. So it'd be great to be coordinated, or at least support what you're doing as well.
Yeah, we had the Old Town Stewards initially when we did our first work group on this, so they're also aware, and they're also a contact that we'll have, and see what we can use them also for, possibly, or when they're expanding.
Councilmember Bauer?
Thank you for putting in this effort. I guess my question is, how long can we sustain it? Because I think to change behavior, it takes more than 6 months or a year,
Yeah, I think it's you're dealing with people, right? That's always the challenge of this. Yeah. So for us, even last year when we really made the push to change patrol efforts to be more proactive versus reactive. So 2024, we were 23% proactive. That means that 2 out of 10, or a little more than 2 out of 10 incidents for us were proactive. We want to have a higher proactive number. Last year we were at 35%. So we increased that by 12%, which is good. So internally, it took a while, a couple months, to really get EPD's culture to shift also back from, hey, it's no longer COVID, go be police officers, go make stops, go talk to people, go connect with the community, go be embedded in the community, which also includes enforcement, right? So that's part of what we're paid to do. So it took a while to really shift that, probably a couple months. And then, you still, we have people that are all on board and they're moving forward. It's a new direction. So I think as a community, now you're dealing with, 30,000 people. Well, even more because of the 130,000 people in the entire county, right? And so that, in theory, that could take years to do. But again, you got to start somewhere. And so we're going to start here, at least within the city. But again, we had to start internally first, get everything, our ducks in a row to really understand the mission. We need to reduce call service, reduce collisions, be out there. Again, even though we increased our activity by 86% overall last year, our complaints actually went down. So we're doing more, but also customer service is also part of this deal for us. We want to see our officers having very good customer service. There's times, obviously, it's not every customer is going to be pleasant and willing, but again, we strive to have that excellence in customer service as well. But it's going to take a while, I think. But I definitely, it's noticeable. I'll occasionally get a text on my personal phone saying, "Hey, you guys are everywhere right now." I'm like, "There's only 4 cops in the whole city." But I remember driving on 8th Street and running some traffic because I'll get out of the office occasionally, and there's the chief on a traffic stop, and then here's another officer a couple blocks away, then I'm a couple blocks away, and then Sergeant Omi's all the way at Harrison H. And so there's 4 of us in a row within like a 6 or 8 block radius that are close together because it's that much. I mean, it's not hard to find violations in this town, especially when people are moving at a very, very quick rate.
Appreciate the effort. Thanks.
Well, I have a couple questions myself. Thank you so much for that presentation and all your great work on this. 10 fatalities. Is that the highest amount of fatalities we've had in a year? Or is that, I mean, it doesn't seem like that would be, hopefully that's not normal.
That's that's since 2020, so that'd be a 5-year span.
5-year span.
The last data from Office of Traffic Safety for the state, we are still ranked number, I think 3. I pulled the data recently, but again, the data's still old. It's a couple years behind. So I mean, we're still averaging about 2 fatals a year just on the 101 corridor alone. That doesn't include. We had fatals obviously on H&I, Harris. So on average, I'd have to pull the numbers again to see how many fatals a year, but we definitely look at them. Our forensic analyst, I had her run the numbers to look at what is the where these happening at. We can actually build a heat map. What is the cause behind it? And then with that information, we can also we can target our enforcement on those locations and also behavior. So we see a lot with pedestrian fatals. On Broadway, I believe all 5 were a pedestrian error somehow. So that technically the pedestrian would have been at fault on those fatalities. So how do we address that? So obviously we need to contact and have a heavier enforcement on pedestrians as well in that area when they're running across the road, or say if someone appears to be in crisis, obviously we can go check them, welfare check them, bring in CSET, bring in care to prevent an incident from happening. That is preventable. And so, but we definitely look at the data and what does the data tell us to target our enforcement and our outreach as well.
And then you were talking about blight removal in 2 different ways. You're talking about reducing crime and negative behaviors through the trespassing ordinance. Now, is there going to be outreach to the business owners? Because some are aware and some aren't aware. Is there going to be specific outreach to those business owners to know that this is a available tool to you?
Yeah. So
and you've had those conversations?
Yes. Part of it is Sergeant Ross with CSET. He is going to be taking the lead up. So if we have problematic locations, he'll be the point of contact with CSET to go talk to the business owner, provide the information. And obviously my goal is to actually go and speak with businesses proactively that are already having issues because they may not know about it. And then also using economic development to message it as well. So we're going to get hopefully multiple. The goal is to get multiple communication styles. So if they miss it on social media or on the website, we're getting a face-to-face contact, or they're getting a door hanger.
Okay. And then lastly, we're talking about blight as far as garbage and weed removal and all of that. So there are properties on Broadway and 4th Street that they're closed or there's no. There's probably a business owner somewhere, but they may not live here. So in situations like that, or in situations perhaps like there are areas that are green, like a green belt, like under under just specifically under a billboard, like who, and And how will that be addressed? Is that something you've thought about and talked about?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of experience dealing with that.
Yeah.
Exactly that one particular location. Those are always challenging because we really want to support the business owners who owns a property, and not just, so we treat it as they're a nail, we're a hammer, right? We don't want to have that approach. It's not a way to interact with the community. Not at least as your first step forward, right? We really want to get that compliance with folks and be there to help them as a government entity. We want to be there to assist them and make their life better. However, when we have the repeated issues, like certain locations in the city, obviously we'll bring in our code enforcement partners to see because they have a different legality wise, and there are different rules to play by than we do. And so we'll ask them, hey, what's the best approach for this? And then we'll get a game plan together. So it's more collaborative. And if we have a property owner that's willing to file a trespass letter, then one thing, there's certain locations when I was running CSET that we would go every single day. And if people were there, we do outreach with them, say, hey, in a week from now, outreach is going to be over. They're going to want you to go to jail because they signed this form. And so those were unwilling. They were met with accountability measures. And the other folks that voluntarily took the outreach, they weren't. So we really try to again balance how we do things. But again, if someone's just completely unwilling, that's a bigger topic we would have with code enforcement. Obviously, we bring the chief in, bring the city manager, bring the city attorney in with us, and look at it from a much broader, wider view.
So,
and whether the property is vacant or occupied or greenbelt, they all have property owners, and they all fall under the same regulations that non-vacant and local property owners follow. So the same tools for abatement would occur if that person doesn't live here. We would go through the process. If there's no response, we would abate the property and bill them.
okay. And lastly, if say that somebody's on Broadway and they happen to see a big trash pile at this particular location, or maybe that particular location, is there that one there, is there a number that they can call to report it? I know I get calls, and so I'm just curious and I'm happy to take them, but I'm curious if there's another opportunity for people, a number that they can call to report these kinds of things.
They can call our Public Works dispatch, which is 441-4203, and they can report illegal dumping.
Great. Okay. Oh, and speaking of illegal dumping, are you finding that a lot of that stuff out there is household trash, or are you finding that or is it both and?
Honestly, I have not been that deep into the woods recently. However, I know that they did a cleanup recently with Ranger Baird with CSET, and it was a mixed combination of just things you'd find at an encampment, things to sustenance or things to actually you'd have to live. I know they have been having issues with individuals dumping household property off, like at 3rd and A, which is a common place, or they drop a bunch of property off for people to go through, which makes a giant mess. And that's one thing actually with economic development. We also want messaging about illegal dumping as well, so people know, hey, they cannot do that, and there's consequences for that.
Yeah, 6th and Myrtles is another location. Well, I am really grateful that we are addressing this blight, because driving into town can really be ugly. I mean, that's for lack of a better word. We have many beautiful parts in our city, and I think that they all can be with the proper work. So thank you so much. Appreciate you. Anything else? Okay, thank you. All right. Well, it's a fun night for reports. Our next report is our Visit Eureka annual report. Economic Development Manager Asbury.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So our division over the past couple of years has kind of expanded some daily operations. We now operate the Welcome Center. We staff Eureka Main Street. We manage the city's tourism marketing through Visit Eureka. And so we want to start coming and doing some kind of little mini annual reports to kind of share what's going on. So last month, Madison came and talked about our Welcome Center. Next month, Amanda's going to come and talk about Eureka Main Street. But tonight I asked Emily to come and talk about Visit Eureka. And the whole point of these is to be information that you want to know about. So if there's information that you're curious about that we're not sharing, we'd be happy to come back and share it. Or if there's metrics that we're not capturing right now that you'd like us to capture going forward, just let us know. And I just, on a personal note, since we've taken over Visit Eureka a little like a year and a half ago, I've definitely noticed a shift in the comments online. They're way more positive. We're getting a lot of positive feedback from our residents, from our businesses. Our relationship with Visit California is going really well. And we're definitely like having some wins, like Good Morning America coming and cruise ships coming and Sports Illustrated coming. So I do think the positive comments on the Visit Eureka is a reflection of Emily's attitude. She's very positive, very authentic, very responsive. And it just overall, our community seems to be responding well to what we're doing, and we're going in the right direction. And we're also partnering with the county on some more regional stuff. So as that kind of gets firmer, we'll bring that back before council, but it's exciting, and we're going in a good direction. With that, I'll pass it over to Emily. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, Mayor and council members. So I'm Emily Kirsch, as Swan mentioned. I manage the Visit Eureka website and all of our Visit Eureka social channels, and I've been working as a consultant since December 2024, and it's really been such an honor to get to tell Eureka's story to the world. So tonight, I'm not just going to share likes and views. I'm going to show you how a consistent, organic digital strategy is driving tourism to our city, and just as importantly, as Swan mentioned, shifting how our own residents feel about their home. So we're going to look at growth over the last year, our success in the national spotlight, and the roadmap for what looks like it's going to be a positive summer of growth for Eureka. Takes a second, don't get too eager. You just need to like give it a little love. Yeah, perfect. Let me see. Aha, we did it. In my last report, which was in July last year, we were thrilled to hit over 1 million views on Facebook. And today I'm proud to say that we've sustained that momentum, hitting another 1 million views in the last 8-month period alone. But the real story isn't just the reach, it's also the quality of that attention. I want to briefly break down what some of these numbers mean for Eureka. So first, we had 22,700 interactions. So you can think of an interaction as a two-way conversation. It means that over 22,000 times, someone didn't just look at a post, they liked it, they shared it with a friend, or they left a comment. So that's a 33% increase in people actively talking with us compared to last year. Most significantly, our 3-second views are up over 418%, and our total watch time has increased by over 600%. So people aren't just scrolling past, they're stopping to watch our story. And in fact, people spent a total of 37 days watching our videos in the last period. And again, 100% of this reach is all organic. So we aren't paying for these eyes. We're really earning them by telling Eureka's story in a way that's really resonating. So what's driving these numbers? It's content that feels really authentic and distinct. This past winter, I think Madison talked a little bit about when she was here last, we did a integrated Eureka for the Holidays campaign. So our top performer in this last period was a feature of the Carson Mansion all lit up in all its glory, which reached 43,000 people. We also focused on the holiday glow in Old Town, which brought in another 35,000 views. We've also been really successful in featuring Eureka in the national spotlight. As Swan mentioned, Good Morning America came to feature the Redwood Skywalk, and that post alone had 51,000 views and 1,700 interactions. The Redwood Skywalk was also featured on Jimmy Fallon, and when we shared that news, it received over 40,000 views. So all that exposure is really priceless, and it positions Eureka as a really distinct destination on a national level. Instagram is where we're seeing our most aggressive growth. We reached over 240,000 views, which is a 100% increase over the previous year, and our interactions have also doubled to around 12,000. This growth is driven by showing up every day. So since July, we've posted 136 times to the feed and 160 times to our stories. We're reaching an audience that's 70% women, with our strongest following in the 35 to 54 age range. These are the key decision makers for family travel, and we're putting Eureka on their radar. Lots of our audience is local, but we're also seeing significant reach in Los Angeles and Sacramento, showing that our message is traveling beyond Humboldt County. While our content is really developed and targeted with that tourist or that visitor in mind, we never forget that this work also helps shift local perception. We want our residents to be proud of our city, and we really take that into account every time that we're highlighting a local business. We saw a huge surge in engagement when we announced Gallagher's moving back to their old location, and when we featured Vista Del Mar and the Shanty, as well as Gabriel's opening in their new location. Again, as Swan mentioned, I'm also seeing a massive shift in the comments. So many people who've moved away, tagging other people and saying they need to come back and visit. People are really responding to the story that we're telling, that Eureka is a place where really great things are happening. Seeing people respond this way is really inspiring. Recently, I also saw a comment from someone saying that they're so excited they're moving to Eureka. And then another person chimed in and said, I'm moving there too. So they had a whole conversation in the comments and decided they're going to connect once they arrive. At the beginning of the year, I put together a highlight reel of all the content that we've been gathering since the beginning of supporting Visit Eureka. And personally, it just made me so proud to get to tell our story. So I also want to encourage all of the locals to take that same tourism approach, to visit a restaurant you haven't tried, shop at a place you haven't been to yet, or take a walk in nature somewhere you haven't been. When we're proud of our city, people pay attention. Next, let's look at the website. When I was here last in July, we were just relaunching visiteureka.com. So last year was all about that relaunch, and I'm happy to report that the site is already finding its stride. The site was offline during that transition and rebuild, so we did expect a temporary dip while Google sort of relearned who we were, but the recovery has been fast. By January of this year, we hit 11,300 visitors, which actually surpassed the number of visitors before that transition. We're also focusing heavily on the next frontier, AI search. So when people ask tools like ChatGPT or Gemini for travel tips, Visit Eureka is already being cited as a top recommendation, about 62 times so far. And then our AI visibility score is 15, which simply means that we're being mentioned more often than our average competitor when a traveler asks about getaways. I also want to highlight what we call our free advertising win. Currently, our website ranks for 1,100 specific search terms. If we had to pay Google ads to show up in all of these searches, it cost around $2,400 each month. Because of our organic search engine optimization strategy, we're getting that exposure for free. So it's essentially $30,000 in undercover advertising that stays in the city pocket while we can continue to grow. To close out the website and social media section, I also want to put it out to all of our amazing local businesses. Our door is always open, so please reach out if you want to mention on the website or need to update something on the website or want to feature on social media. I do my best to get out there and get content, but always am open to suggestions and recommendations. And when I get them in DMs, I really try to turn right around and have it on my calendar to capture that content. Marketing isn't just about what's happening on the phone screen. It's also about the physical experience when folks come into our streets and into our city. So we've been supporting the city's physical wayfinding efforts, including the launch last year of new billboards and upcoming banner updates. We're also working on a refreshed brochure for the Eureka Welcome Center and the development of a first-in-its-kind annual Eureka magazine. So this will be a really high-quality, timeless publication that's designed for the in-market traveler. So those people who are already here looking for their next shop or their next restaurant to discover. We're going to be sending distribution out to hotels, restaurants, and all those key tourist locations to encourage visitors to stay one more night or to return for a visit, come back. The project's still under development, so we'll keep you posted as we get closer to the launch. Partnerships are also a big cornerstone of our regional strategy. We've been moving in lockstep with our friends at Humboldt Made. They're currently We're currently in the drink, dine, and stay phase of the Choose Humboldt campaign through the end of March, and then it shifts more into an experience Humboldt. So we're focusing on some of the same things with Visit Eureka. So it just makes sure that all of the visitors are and all of our content for local businesses is being seen by travelers at the right time in their planning process. We also have a really robust content pipeline that feeds into Visit California. We regularly submit our posts, our social media, PR pitches, and Eureka's a frequent fixture on the California Welcome Center social media accounts. So this kind of statewide amplification is really invaluable. It ensures Eureka remains top of mind destinations for travelers beyond our immediate region. And then one of the most exciting results of this partnership has been that PR win that Swan mentioned. Through our work with Visit California, we pitched a writer from Sports Illustrated to come up here and do a feature on, he was already doing a feature on fly fishing, but we pitched Eureka as his base camp. So come up, explore downtown, stay in our hotels, eat at our restaurants, go do your fly fishing, and then come back and enjoy the city. So the article's still in the works. Again, we'll keep you posted when it gets published. Looking ahead to, here's the strategic partnership slide. Let me move one more. There we go. Looking ahead to, to summer 2026, we have a really robust roadmap in place. Our content plan for this upcoming summer is to create high-value guides and itineraries. So everything from where to find the best fresh seafood to a deep dive into our historical sites. Our social media is going to really be front and center for all of the summer events, the 4th of July celebration, the Kinetic Sculpture Race, Forest Moon Festival, Friday Night Markets, of course, among many others. We're using the content library that we've developed for the past year to develop those curated itineraries to really give visitors a map for their perfect Eureka summer. We're not just telling them to come, we're showing them all they can experience in Eureka. To wrap up, the data is a really great indicator of success, but the real wins are the connections that we're making through this authentic storytelling. Since I stepped into this role, we've shown that we don't need a massive ad budget to get people's attention. We just really need to tell Eureka's story as it is. My goal is to keep telling that story in a way that's grounded and real, so I just want to make sure that whether you're a visitor from out of the state or a neighbor just down the street, that you're excited to go out and experience everything Eureka has to offer. We're going to keep inviting people to explore our streets, our amazing businesses, and the beauty of our city. Personally, it's really an honor to get to do this work, and I'm really excited to see where the upcoming year takes us. So thank you so much for your time, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Emily? Councilmember Castellano?
Thank you. Very exciting work. I was curious, when you were speaking to the interactions on our Facebook page, how does that compare to like the average for interactions?
That's a good question. I'm happy to send, I have like a full robust social media report, and I'd be happy to share that. And that can compare to some of our like local, it has an analysis of some of the similar pages so you can see, but I'm happy to share that if that would be helpful. Yeah.
And then with the Instagram, I know you were saying you don't buy ads for Facebook. Do you purchase ads for Instagram?
No, it's all in like the Meta Business Suite. So that's where we manage both Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, right,
and so we
right, right.
we currently don't do any paid advertising. We're exploring maybe for some of our events to get folks up here and kind of in that planning process. We're having conversations around that, but right now we don't do any paid advertising.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe there might be a benefit in, for some targeted feeder market, kind of like, hey, come, for this event, you've been thinking about coming, now's the time.
100%. Yeah. And we do have access to some of that data. So we can do like lookalike audiences. We can see what kind of people are coming from out of the area in town for some of the events. We can like look back at historical data and then do lookalike and advertise to those people. So you don't have to have a large budget. You can even spend like a couple $100 and get in exactly front of the right people to advertise events, or if we want to push tourism in the shoulder season, things like that. You can get really targeted with it without a big spend.
Great. And I love the Eureka as base camp for the surrounding area idea, because then it also kind of ties in other community activities as well. And we're not saying like only come to Eureka.
Yeah.
I just made a list. I'll send it to you of like all of the kind of bigger events for 2026 in their calendar. So
yeah, and I have a full social media calendar too.
Oh, cool.
And so I hopefully have most of them, but there's so much going on. So please send it over. I'll make sure it's all calendared on our website. We have an event section on the website, and I'll make sure it's all calendared in social media, not just like on the days of, but also in advance of the events, right? Because we want to get people excited before it's happening.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Leslie.
Councilmember Contreras Deloche.
Well, first, thank you. This was very exciting to just it's great to see it from this perspective, and I'm glad that it's a morale boost. There's a lot of really cool things happening in our little city. Our little city does a lot of stuff that bigger cities aren't even doing. So I think it's, but we just had kind of like a marketing issue, I feel like, and so I think it's wonderful that's being promoted, because I think it's really critical for everybody moving forward for that morale to be there. You mentioned the magazine, City of Eureka magazine, just for like a second. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I wasn't totally clear.
Yeah.
On,
So we're in
audience.
the very beginning stages, but the idea is having sort of a print guide to all the great things there are to do in Eureka that really goes more into depth than some of the local businesses. Our main tourism attractions has a guide to annual events, so someone could pick it up and see things to do while they're here in market, but then they could also take it home with them and get it inspired to come back in the future. So it's in its very early stages. So that's just a little teaser, but the plan is to have it developed, published annually, and
Okay,
be a
yeah, I was
driver.
going to ask. So it would be like once a year, so annual,
Yeah,
and the target audience would be
in market visitors, so
Okay.
people who are already here. But I could see on the website, like if someone requested information, Visit California has something that's similar, as do many other destination marketing organizations, DMOs, where if someone's interested in a location, they can put their info in and we could send them a guide. Yeah.
really cool idea.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? No?
Thank you all.
Well, I want to say thank you, Emily. Your work is tremendous. I watch you on social media. I share your stuff on social media. And I love how you capture so many, just such a variety about our city, because there is a huge variety. We live in paradise. I was telling somebody before the meeting, we live in paradise, and there's just so much out there for people to join and enjoy. And the way that you're showcasing it really does. It shows the beauty of that, and I just really appreciate you. And I can see just the difference in people's attitudes just in the last, short time that you've been doing this and that you've been working towards this, and we have. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing what happens next.
Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
having me. Yeah, thanks everybody.
All right. Gosh, what an exciting early meeting. So this moves us to public comment. This is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda. City Council policy is to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not take an action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. Is there anyone here that wants to comment and open public comment? Come on up.
My name is Misty, and I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm really excited about the content of tonight's meeting. It was very encouraging just to hear what the police are doing to help stuff around here, and the health services that I received when I came to Eureka 3 years ago on March 17th are part of the reason that I'm standing here today. I've been healed from PTSD, suicidal ideations. I came here and I was homeless to the rescue mission. I received help there, and I also received help from the Betty Quan Chin program as well. And I just wanted to let everyone know that our church, the people that really helped me get to where I am today, has opened on Wabash and Union, and that's available for people to attend. On Friday nights, we have worship live at 7 p.m. and then Sunday service at 10. And that's who I really have to thank for my health. I've been with that body of believers now for a couple of years, and in the last year, I've got my mental health back and healed from things I never thought I could be healed from. And I've lost 75 pounds that I gained while I was in homeless shelters for 2 years. They eat really good. And it's just been a wonderful journey, and I'm really happy to be here in Eureka. And so I want to give a shout out to this place, because I'm glad that in my healing journey that this is where God dropped me off, and I think that I'm a good example of what perseverance and good people and good services and things like that can really do for a person that wants to get better and doesn't want to stay out there on the street. And so that's basically all I wanted to say. I'm so glad that it fits perfectly, because I do think there is a divine spotlight on Eureka. Yes, definitely. And I have some scriptures to share. Psalm 107:20 says, "He sent forth his word and healed them. He rescued them from the grave." Proverbs 4:20 through 22, God's words are life and health to the whole body. Jeremiah 17:14, "Heal me, O Lord, and I will be healed. Save me, and I will be saved, for you are the one I praise." Matthew 8:17, "Himself took our infirmities and bare our sicknesses." So all grace and glory goes to God the Father above and his Son, Yeshua HaMashiach. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. Is there anyone else that would like to come up? Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time and the opportunity. And my name is Tana Moorhead. I'm with the Small Business Administration. Hello again. I am from Texas. I understand a council member is from Texas, or somewhere in that region in the state. But anyways, I am here representing the U.S. Small Business Administration. For those of you who may not know, we are a federal agency. SBA is the largest source of funds to help small businesses all throughout the U.S. I am representing the Office of Disaster Recovery Assistance. There are different divisions of SBA, and what the Office of Disaster Recovery Assistance does is that we help homeowners, renters, and small businesses when there is a declared disaster. We have several types of disaster or agency declared disasters, one of which where California was impacted in this area, this county, Eureka, and there are other contiguous counties. I believe that this was a presidential or governor certification disaster. So we're able to offer homeowners, renters, and small businesses disaster loans at a below interest market rate. What this particular disaster loan program does is it helps individuals with repairs and replacement of their damaged property. And so I have material here tonight to share with you. If you have constituents, anyone in your areas that may have been impacted, then they're able to apply. The information is here on our flyer. And we also are helping businesses as well. A lot of times businesses go without income if there isn't, the impact is directly, may not be physical damages, but they may have economical injury damages. And so with that, our program services them as well. And so I'd like to share this information with you. If you have any questions for me, you certainly can call. I've attached my business card on the bottom of the sheet. And you can reach me. I have other colleagues who are here. My phone number? Oh, sure. Definitely. But so that you know, phone number to the customer service is 800-659-2955, 800-659-2955. And if I can share this real quickly, that would be great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in chambers that cares to speak on non-agenda items? Okay, seeing no one, is there anyone on Zoom?
Colin?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This is Colin Fisk with CRTP, the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. I'd just like to respond a bit to the report that you heard on the Operation 101 Gateway, specifically about the serious and fatal traffic crashes in the corridor. I hate to be a downer, but there is a reason that despite that astronomical increase in traffic stops last year, the number of crashes basically stayed the same. Research consistently shows that enforcement only has a limited impact on traffic safety, and specifically it has an effect when it's conducted in an intensive, high visibility manner in a specific location. But that effect doesn't last after that high visibility enforcement ends. So we just think it's critical that we base our efforts to address the safety crisis on evidence. And the evidence consistently shows that the most effective way to reduce traffic injuries and deaths is to redesign the infrastructure. Our issue here is not just some kind of anomalous behavior or a matter of individuals making uniquely bad decisions. Corridors like this one are the most dangerous corridors in basically every community across the country. And it's because they were designed to move a large amount of traffic as quickly as possible, not to maximize safety, despite the fact that they go through this vibrant community where thousands of people live and work and shop and walk and bike. I won't deny that there's also a cultural problem, but going back to the research again, there's really no quick fix for that. There are lots of examples of well-studied public education campaigns for traffic safety, and the universal result is that they just don't work. What, if anything, does work to change traffic safety culture is really not well established yet in the research. So for now, if we really want to save lives on the streets, which I hope we do, we really need to focus our efforts on infrastructure reform rather than more enforcement or education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Philip? Philip, are you there? He's unmuted. I think he's gone.
Okay. Do you see anyone else?
I see no one else.
Okay, with that, we will close the open public comment and bring us to council reports. Councilmember Castellano.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Since our last council meeting, I attended the Black Humboldt's Black Heritage Gala along with Mayor Burgell and Councilmember Fernandez. I attended and co-chaired with Alyssa from the Realtors, the Eureka Main Street Economic Vitality Committee, and it's neat. There's a lot of crossover with some of the work that Visit Eureka is doing along in terms of some of the thinking about experiences and how that sharing experiences of Old Town and Eureka Main Street area kind of will help bring more people to the area. Kind of adjacent to the my work with the City of Eureka, I'm on the Workforce Development Board and attended that meeting. And that's that. Yeah, I guess that's all I've done. Really, amazing.
Councilmember Moulton.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any travel to report. And again, still a pretty slow season. Waiting for my 2x2s to start up again. But I did get to attend the Humboldt Bay Fire Annual Awards Dinner. Always a lively time. These are awards that the staff of the department vote on to give to. They're the ones who are doing the voting. And I just wanted to shout out to firefighter Dolan Dillon, who won Firefighter of the Year. I think it says a lot about the department who everyone there chooses to elevate. This young man is incredibly industrious and has taken on a lot of work to better himself professionally. And it's that kind of attitude, that development from within that's really building a strong, connected department where people are moving up from within the ranks. And it's really good to see. And I think he just embodies that kind of attitude. And it's good to see that that's who the firefighters are choosing to celebrate. And congratulations to Dolan. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes. Like Councilmember Castellano and Mayor Burgell, I was also at the Black Humboldt Black Parrot Heritage Ball. First time in like a number of years that I've actually been able to attend, and it's always fantastic, especially the fashion show that they had done this time around. Later in that evening, attended the 87th anniversary of the Eureka Theater. Got to hear some of our local students play too. Zane, Winship, among a few of the other schools outside of the district, perform with, how would they be described? Psychedelic, punk rock, brass band, marching band, March 4th. So that was definitely fun to watch. And then, like Council Member Moulton, I'm just waiting for my 2x2s to start back up as well. And then, of course, I have a town hall scheduled for Monday, March 30th, 6 o'clock. At the district building for at Eureka City Schools district office.
I believe it's 5:30.
5:30. Thank you. That's why I had to look to you. Thank you. The budget. Thank you for doing that.
It's the 30th.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Bauer.
Thank you. I do have some travel to report. I attended the Cal City's Board of Directors meeting in Berkeley. Lively discussion about warehouses and the taxes that go with that, because if your community has a Amazon warehouse, you get the tax money, and so there's some discussion at the state level about sharing that revenue among cities that don't have them. So pretty contentious. We'll see where that bill goes, but yeah, it was a really interesting debate. We did talk about too the state budget. Things are okay right now, but we're looking at 10% reduction coming in the future, which is about $30 billion. So things like housing are on the blocks, things like, environmental projects. And so just concerned about that, what that means for the city. So a lot of discussion about state budget as well. Attended a dinner with the elected officials to protect America, which was great. Talked about renewable energy, and to see what our grid, which the power that comes into the community, I think was built in the 50s, and understanding what that means for our city and for Humboldt County, like how we're going to, develop our own renewable energy, how we're going to increase our grid capacity. It was a pretty fascinating discussion on all that. I want to thank Renee for attending the RCEA meeting that I couldn't attend. Appreciate that. I also attended the Humboldt Bay Fire Awards ceremony, and it was great. Like what Councilmember Moulton said about Dolan, and Yola too also received some accolades, and both are hardworking guys, great firefighters, and appreciate all they do for this city. Also attended a lunch with a group called Cademo, and they're basically trying to get the first floating wind energy renewable project off of Morro Bay, and it's a real challenge. So learning a lot about what that means for us in the future, what the struggles they're going through to get that going. And I think that's it for me, and I'll have some travel to report, I think. Yeah, next meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Contreras-Deloche.
So I'll do kind of a speed run since I wasn't at the last meeting. So I'll do kind of a catch up on some of the stuff. I had attended an AHA meeting. I also went to a waterfront signage meeting. This was kind of cool with community services. Ashley Vellis, as you know from, she's local fisheries, and she had located a potential grant for doing some additional signage around history and the history of the fishing industry and stuff. So I loved, quick shout out to our staff over at Community Services. They were like so enthusiastic and so supportive and helpful with this idea that a community member brought to them, and figuring out how to do this, which is a really neat way to kind of continue to loop in that educational component throughout the city, especially for families. Let's see here. I went to the Elected Officials to Protect America meeting. It's an environmental group. Shots Energy, they had done the presentation. It's Arnie Jacobson. They talked about, like Scott said, microgrids and renewable resources. That was really interesting. I attended the RCEA meeting, also talking about energy and grids. So I really got a lot over the course of about a week and a half. The emergency shelter ad hoc, you guys will be coming back and we'll be able to tell you more about that. I got the presentation from staff on a trip to Portland that they took and the things that they learned and what they found out and kind of some of those takeaways. So when we come back to present, they'll be presenting a piece of that, not just us, so that you guys can get that information. I attended Pathway to Payday. And I also got to go to Humboldt Bay Fire's awards event along with everybody else. And that I'm always touched by the things that they're doing because it's such, they're all often such a positive and fun group of people, but it's also really stressful work. And I appreciate that. And like, Councilmember Bauer had mentioned, one of the things that stood out to me was talking about how Yola had just started this kind of, what did they call it? It was like a
peer support.
Yeah, that he just reached out and started that. And I think what a great thing to just know that there's this need there, to understand that as a senior firefighter and be like, wow, we need help. I also attended something called Beating the Blight over the weekend. Sheriff Hansel presented at that, Sue Campbell, Redwood Teen Challenge, and they were talking about, a number of the issues that we're experiencing here as a community. And they were talking about it from the perspective of really how do we kind of elevate and help these people that are experiencing addiction. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but it was really just a very really well structured, a lot of training, that Narcan training at the end, and really just very compassionate about how do we move forward with this? Like, what's a good and healthy plan? So, and my last thing, I got to meet with Chief Stevens. I appreciate him making time for me and really, was able to get kind of a snapshot of, like what's going on with staffing and everything over at EPD and just all the good work they're doing over there as well and doing it understaffed at the moment. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I have a few things to report. I attended the HCOG meeting, and after much discussion, we adopted the Transportation Action Plan. So that was a win and a great thing. I just wanted to say I went to see The Half-Life of Madame Curie with Cassandra Hazeltine. She's a local, she's with the Film Commission. Incredible show. She's an incredible actress. It was wonderful to see and to be a part of that. I did go to the Old Town Stewards. They had a convening where they talked about beautification and how they can make a difference in the city, which was really interesting. I have a town hall planning meeting. I had one and I'm having another one coming up. That town hall, by the way, is May 9th. And we have a speaker, Rick Griffin, coming from Arizona to speak about neuroscience. So it should be pretty exciting. We hope you all will come. It's already been said, I went to the Heritage Ball Gala, which was the food, the things that folks were wearing, the fashion show. It was just such a beautifully done and fun event. And I went to also the Humboldt Bay Fire Awards dinner, which I am always moved by, when they talk about what our firefighters, what you guys do. And one of the stories, one of the winners, and I'm sorry that I don't have the names, but one of the winners of an award this year was a group of guys that went to a call at Silvercrest, and they'd climbed 5 flights of stairs for this fire. And they carried this person, these firefighters carried this person, not the elevator, carried this person down 5 flights of stairs, to make that effort to save them. I mean, that's, to me, that's hero status. And I really appreciate the work that they do in our community. It really moves me. And I too appreciated just hearing all of the wonderful things that were being said, and that they do peer support, because that job is hard, the things that you have to see and being able to have those conversations and healing. yeah, it was really impactful and fun. And then I realized that I didn't tell you guys when I gave you the challenge for the Perilous Plunge, which is the date of that is March 21st. And you can sign up right there on the Discovery Museum website. And since we can't do Bowl for Kids' Sake this year, perhaps it might be a great opportunity. You're only in the bay for a few minutes. The firefighters they help us come out so you're safe and feeling great. And then you get in a hot tub. So I know that you will have the best time ever. It will be like nothing you've ever experienced before in your life. I promise you that. So I hope that you'll join us with that. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that I am working on this really incredible project in honoring the women of the red light district in our city. And, you know, it is such a blessing and an honor to be able to working on honoring these unsung heroes. And if you get an opportunity to read the history of the way that these women supported our city in the early 1900s and kept our city alive, and it wasn't a choice. They got fined and they got, you know, all these different things. But it's certainly an opportunity to really highlight the gift that they gave to our city as far as keeping the city afloat during that time. So I'm really excited to be working on that project. If you want to read any articles about it, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to send them to you because it's just that interesting. And let's see, I think I had just 2 more things. For not having anything, I have a few more things. I don't know if any of you saw this today, but I'm just going to mention it. So Fortuna is giving 236 acres back to the Wiyot tribe, and I just wanted to mention that because it's an incredible thing happening in our region, and I really appreciate that work, and I appreciate the Land Back movement. They're making progress in our Chinatown. And then really, honestly, lastly, Boris and Ivana Scream-A-Lot from the Sequoia Park Zoo. We now know that their baby is a girl. So it's a girl. Everybody be joyous. It's all pink and happy, joyous, and freeness. So with that, I am finished with my report, and that will move us to public hearings. So 2026 Inland Zoning Code update with Director Kenyon.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here for this hearing on the 2026 Code update. So it's for the Inland Code, which is Chapter 155 of our Municipal Code. It applies to all areas of the city except the coastal zone. And we comprehensively updated our Inland Zoning Code in 2019, and we've been doing a really good job of keeping it fresh and up to date. We've done 9 amendments since then, 5 cleanup amendments, and 4 targeted amendments. So this will be the 10th amendment. It is both a targeted amendment around design standards and design review. And then since that implicated so many sections, and the last time we did a cleanup amendment was in 2023, we decided to also just make this a general cleanup amendment. So it's a lot to cover tonight, but by doing it all under one ordinance, we're saving the city a lot of time and money. So bear with me. All right, so I'm first going to start with a summary of the design-related provisions. So for a variety of reasons that are discussed in your agenda summary, we are proposing to change the design review process for new and modified buildings so that discretionary design review at a notice public hearing is no longer required. And instead, design review is an administrative process conducted by city staff based on objective code standards. In parallel with this change to the design review process, we are proposing to strengthen the objective design standards in the code. To ensure community members continue to be informed about large development projects in their neighborhood, we are proposing to also add a neighborhood information meeting requirement for projects that add 20,000 square feet or more of floor area within or abutting a mixed use or residential zoning district. Even though the design standards are meant to be objective, I'm sure questions will arise about interpretation, and in that case, the code will allow staff to refer code questions to Planning Commission for review and decision. And if the applicant can't or doesn't want to meet the objective building design standards, they can also elect to go through discretionary design review with the Design Review Committee as an optional path to deviate from standards. In this case, the standard of review for approving their deviation is that the project meets the intent of the code standards. And there are intent statements at the beginning of each of the sections of the code. That would be the criteria for approval. The targeted amendments to design review and design standards are a result of a number of presentations and discussions at City Council that occurred in 2023 and 2024, with the last big discussion in December of 2024. Then in 2025, we hired our consultant, Ben Noble, to perform a code diagnostic, looking into how we can strengthen our objective standards and translate our subjective design review criteria into objective standards. And he's also on the Zoom if we have questions for him. So this all culminated in a community town hall with Councilmember Moulton in December 2025, where we received feedback on what standards matter to folks most when we're talking about infill housing in existing neighborhoods. We also released an early draft of the updated design standards to design and development professionals and asked for their expertise in providing feedback. So the sections that I'm going to focus on are these three. We're significantly revising our building design standards. We're adding new standards for large site development, and we have some new subsections in our general standards I'm going to talk about. So starting with the building design standards, they apply in inland, mixed use, and residential zones shown here on this map. For any new building 500 square feet or larger, and any exterior modifications or additions to a public-facing building facade, single-family homes, accessory dwelling units, healthcare-related uses in the hospital medical district, and public infrastructure and utility uses are exempt. So the standards only apply to public-facing building facades, and this has a new definition. It applies to sites that abut a public street, public trail like the waterfront trail, or a public open space like a plaza, except that alleys are excluded. The only time facades facing alleys are included is if the alley directly abuts an open space, like these building facades that there's snug and opera alleys between them and these plazas, but they essentially abut the plazas. All right, so first we are retaining standards that we already have that have been very effective. You might remember the tale of two Starbucks. They were built by the same developer around the same time, but the one on the left is in the coastal zone, and so it was not subject to the Inland Code's objective design standards. Existing objective standards that made the Starbucks on the right superior in design include a prohibition on blank walls over a certain size, a limit on the amount of the facade that can be covered in stucco, and a requirement for a prominent primary entrance facing the street and connecting to the sidewalk with a pedestrian walkway. Other existing standards were retained with expanded applicability. For instance, we have standards for storefront ceiling height and transparency that are currently only applicable on designated pedestrian-focused frontages in downtown and Henderson Center. They are now proposed to apply to commercial buildings in all mixed-use zones, and there is a new transparency requirement for the ground floor of multifamily residential buildings. The purpose is to ensure buildings contribute to an active and engaging public realm. We also are proposing to strengthen certain standards, like adding more objective clarification of entrance design options to increase the visual prominence of street-facing entrances. We also currently have a vague standard that exterior materials need to be durable, and so we've added some objective criteria for that. Currently, we have a list of, I think, about 14 architectural features, and we require projects to include at least 2 of those features. Under the proposed update, there are 2 lists of options, one for facade articulation and one for roof design, and applicants must include at least 2 of the facade options and 1 of the roof design options. And then for roof design, it doesn't preclude flat roofs. For instance, one option is a cornice line, like you see on this link housing rendering, where a horizontal band is placed where the building wall meets the roof line and provides a defined top edge to the building. And Ben Noble has been working on a guidance document to accompany all this objective standards in the code that's going to have annotative photographs to help us understand all the options and how to calculate them and what they mean. There are also a number of new standards, and I'm not going to go into more detail about these, but I do have additional slides if anybody has questions. And I will take a moment to mention that we have new, there's pictures, massing standards. They set a maximum building length measured parallel to the public-facing building facade of 300 feet. That's slightly shorter than target. And they require a major massing break for facades over 150 feet in length. These standards will only really implicate like large big box stores developed on large lots. Our Old Town and downtown blocks are only 250 feet in length, and we have mid-block alleys. So while our older buildings feel large, if built today, they wouldn't trigger any of those massing standards. The idea is for new buildings with breaks every 150 and 300 feet to mimic our existing historic pattern to some extent. Okay, now quickly overview of the new large site development standards section. These standards are going to apply to residential and mixed-use zoning districts where there is an implicated development area of 1.5 acres or more for new development on vacant sites and for 75% or more redevelopment of floor area. The inspiration here was the Jacobs School Campus, and it triggers requirements for maximum block length and mid-block connections that connect to the existing street and alley grid surrounding a site. There are also requirements for internal pedestrian circulation within the site and connectivity from the site to adjacent bus stops, sidewalks, and bike lanes. There's also a new communal open space requirement. We've avoided open space requirements per unit or site for smaller sites because they can really get in the way of redevelopment, but for we're adding an open space requirement for sites that are 3 acres or more in size. And there are new contextual massing standards that would apply to large sites like the Jacob site that are across the street from a row of detached homes. Also, so for moving on to general standards, I just wanted to note, we're strengthening standards for mechanical equipment screening. We're changing the applicability of standards we already have for putting a fence or wall between commercial industrial development and residential properties, and for providing additional upper floor setbacks. Right now, those standards are based on whether the site is in a mixed use or industrial zoning district and next to a residential zoning district, and that has resulted in some weird applications where a smaller development has to, in a mixed use district, have to screen from a larger development in a residential district. So now it's going to apply based on what use is going in and what the use is next door. And we're adding standards for breaking up the massing of side building walls, for new multifamily commercial uses that are adjacent to existing single family homes and close to the side property line, and a new standard for the design of accessory structures when they're located between the primary building and the street, that they have the same quality of materials, not necessarily the same detail of design. And then there's a lot of standards I'm not covering that are in the code that really affect design, and I just wanted to point that out. I think for me, the standard in our 2019 code update that has affected design the most is actually our parking placement standard that now it prohibits surface parking lots between a building and the street. I think that standard has done more for design than all these building design standards. And also our bike parking standards. We have trash screening and placement standards. We have outdoor lighting. And we allow a lot less signage than we used to. We have more robust landscaping requirements, and we have requirements for pedestrian access from a parking lot to an entrance. So those are all existing standards. I just wanted to point out also affect design that we're not covering. One thing I wanted to mention is that when we talked to Historic Preservation Commission about this update, they were really intrigued by the contextual massing standards that apply when you're adjacent or across the street from detached homes. And they're curious about potentially adding certain standards like that for new development in historic neighborhoods, for ensuring that massing and setbacks of new structures align with the existing pattern. And they also were on board with adding objective standards for additions and alterations to properties on the local register. We have a subjective process for approving those things based on subjective criteria that we may not legally be able to enforce in certain situations. And so they are very interested in that. And I know on Council Strategic Vision, there's a goal to update our historic preservation regulations. So I see this considering Historic Preservation Commission's comments more in the near future. All right, moving on. Summary of other cleanup provisions. So I guess some context. Every property in the city is in a zoning district, and every zoning district has a list of allowed uses. Some uses aren't allowed at all. Some uses we think those are great for the character of that district. They should be allowed by right. We call that principally permitted. And some we say, oh, we're not sure if it's okay for that district, but it might be. So we're going to allow it through a discretionary conditional use permit process. And so part of this code update, we're modifying, deleting, adding certain land use classifications. And two that are exciting are that we're adding a new outdoor visitor serving market use and a new renewable energy facility use. Right now, the outdoor markets on private property, they fall under outdoor retail, and microgrids and other renewable energy facilities fall under public facilities. And both those use types are not allowed very broadly and often require a conditional use permit. So by creating these new use types, we can allow these things that we really want in more areas and with less of a permit process. Another change to promote a particular use is that we currently allow new neighborhood serving commercial uses like corner markets and coffee shops with a zoning code amendment to apply a neighborhood market overlay. And we're proposing to change that to allowing them with a conditional use permit. It's still a discretionary process. It's just one meeting instead of 3, and it's a few $1,000s less money. There's another way to get a commercial use in a residential zoning district That's by having a home occupation, which is an accessory use that is really limited in, like, for instance, how many customers you can have per day. Right now, a home occupation requires both a home occupation permit and a business license. And unfortunately, our permitting software doesn't link different permits for the same project. So you have to input all the same information twice. So we're changing it so that it's just a business license with the zoning verification. So they'll only have to apply once, since we also want to promote home occupations. We're doing the same thing for mobile vendors and vacation rentals for the same reason. Meaning consolidating everything under one business license that then gets routed to all the various departments for approval. All right, in our mixed use districts, I think the biggest change is for the hospital medical district, which is circled in pink here. Currently, housing is only allowed with a conditional use permit. We recently had to process one when somebody wanted to add a residence behind a medical office, and it seemed a shame to make them go through that process when we really need housing, including housing for medical professionals. So we want to make housing principally permitted. The only industrial zoning that we have outside of the coastal zone is this tiny area called the Hinge Industrial District. And it's really struggled. It had a fire, it has vacancies. And so we're proposing to expand the types of non-industrial uses allowed in this area, including instructional services, which could include music and dance studios, since one of those wanted to go in here and it wasn't allowed. And then weirdly enough, our code requires a use permit for artisan manufacturing in this zone, and that's what this zone is for. So we changed it to principally permitted. It seemed like a mistake. Okay, vacation rental regulations. If you recall, the Planning Commission formed a subcommittee. They made all these recommendations. They presented to you about updating the regulations. This is comes out of that. We're changing the distinction between vacation rental and commercial lodging. Right now, it's based on zoning district. If you're in a residential zoning district, you're a vacation rental. If you're in a commercial district, a mixed use district, you're commercial lodging. Even if you're converting a home into a short-term rental, it's called commercial lodging. So we're changing that so that you're a vacation rental if you're converting a home into a short-term rental. And you're not updating it to meet, commercial building standards. You're not turning it into a hotel or motel with ADA accessibility. You're just converting your home. And you're not being required to upgrade anything building code-wise. That's a vacation rental. And then you're subject to the vacation rental regulations and any future cap, regardless of your zoning district. Because the concern with vacation rentals is the conversion of permanent housing into short-term housing. So we want to regulate all conversions of long-term housing into short-term housing. Also, we're changing it so that if council is to set a cap on rentals, it would be on full unit rentals. Currently, the code foresees a cap on rentals with no proprietor on site, and that creates this loophole where somebody could own a large apartment complex and live on site and rent out 10, 20 units, and they would count as proprietor on site and wouldn't be subject to the cap. So in this case, if you have a full unit rental, it'll be subject to a future cap. Home shares won't be. And we also added an exemption for homes on the local register of historic places to incentivize people to purchase these homes, because we want to find more incentives for that. And right now we don't have as many carrots as we would like. We also, at Planning Commission's recommendation, are setting new limitations on concentrations of full unit rentals. So you can only have one full unit rental per lot unless you have 10 or more units, and then you get it 20% of your units can be short-term rentals. That doesn't mean you couldn't decide to become commercial lodging and then upgrade your site to commercial standards. But if you're going to be a vacation rental, you only get one per site. And then there's a 250-foot separation between full unit rental sites to prevent neighborhood overconcentration. And then changing the approval system. Right now you need a use permit, and that's weird because it runs with the land in perpetuity. And Planning Commission really wants vacation rentals to be something that is tied to the operator, not to the site in perpetuity. And so we're changing it so that it's a non-transferable business license held by a property owner that's unique to the site and to the owner. And if a cap is in effect, we added a use it or lose it provision where if you don't contribute transient occupancy tax to the city every year, then you are kicked out, and we give it to somebody who will generate taxes for us. And just so you know, since 2023, we've been working really hard on vacation rental compliance, and we've finally gotten through the backlog of operators that were operating unpermitted and sending them letters saying we're auditing you and you owe us transient occupancy tax, but new ones keep sprouting up. So it's not something that we can say, oh, we finished this compliance drive, it's ongoing, but we've definitely addressed the backlog, and you'll hear more about that soon. And I have more stats on that too, that I'll cover maybe next meeting when we do the housing element and general plan annual reports. Okay, outdoor lighting standards. This came up a lot when we were doing outreach last year on the Gulch Greenway ordinance. There were complaints about outdoor lighting. We struggle with applicants all the time to interpret what it means to be shielded and downcast. So we use the dark sky group's model ordinance to set a quantitative standard and add a figure to show what that means. We also often get comments from California Department of Fish and Wildlife about color temperature, because for some reason, LED lights often are white or blue, and those colors are really hard on wildlife. They're disruptive. And so we added color temperature limits. We also added stricter color temperature and light trespass limitations near gulches and greenways. And we broadened the applicability of a 16-foot height limit standard. And right now, most lighting was installed before these standards. So we have all this legal non-conforming lighting. And our only trigger for upgrades right now are if somebody applies for a building permit or a use permit, then we require them to update their outdoor lighting. But we're adding a trigger when we receive a complaint of a nuisance, or we'll basically just saying that we have the ability to then request that or require them to upgrade their lights. That language we stole from the county's recent update to their outdoor lighting regulations. All right, moving on. Wireless telecommunication facilities. We are proposing to repeal those regulations that are in Chapter 159 and replace them with a new section of the zoning code. They were last updated in 2010, so updates are needed for consistency with current federal law and to address current technology. 5G is now less about macro cell towers and more about small cells on utility poles and buildings. And we also just wanted to change the style of the regulations so they match the style of Chapter 155. But most facilities continue to require discretionary approval through a use permit or minor or conditional use permit. It's just small cell facilities and modifications to existing facilities that we approve administratively per federal law. We don't have discretion. And it's basically, even though it looks completely different, it's essentially continuing most of our existing policy. So discouraging new freestanding facilities and residential historic locations, only allowing them if there is no feasible alternative that meets a provider's service objectives. That standard is set by federal case law. There's a neighborhood meeting requirement. There's extended noticing requirements for tall facilities. There's a setback from residential properties. We require undergrounding of equipment if feasible. We prohibit speculative structures where there isn't an identified provider that wants to site. We require design for future co-location. We require landscaping with trees around ground mounted equipment. And the noise, we have noise and height standards that aren't changing very much at all. Okay, cleanup provisions to ADU regulations and density bonus regulations. As you might remember, we just did an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, update in 2025 at the request of the state, and then they made more changes effective January 1st, 2026. So those got added. Oh, and then one fun thing is we have an infill incentive permit. I just want to put that out there because we don't have that many people who've applied for one. And it allows for deviations from a variety of standards, like the number of units, maximum number of dwelling units, and the maximum height and the maximum floor area. You can deviate if you provide 2 or more benefits to the public, to the community from this list of benefits. Including, like, one of the benefits is if you're taking a really blighted property and redeveloping it, that counts. Or if you're going above and beyond with design, with your design, that counts as a qualifying benefit. So we're adding a few more: all electric construction, enhanced bicycle parking beyond our bicycle parking requirements, end of trip bicycle facilities, so showers at a workplace, and shared driveways where multiple properties work together to share one driveway to avoid having multiple driveways. I see questions in people's eyes and I'll... Okay, moving on to the parking section. We made some changes there. We're codifying a state requirement that we cannot require vehicle parking within a half mile of a major transit stop, which HCOG just added a bunch that are shown on this map. Also, we're adding an exemption from parking requirements for conversion of existing parking to outdoor dining areas. We did get a comment from CRTP that we're not going far enough, that we should eliminate all requirement for vehicle parking, which we're not proposing, although there's quite a large portion of the city that we can't require it. And then we added a bunch of standards around parking access to limit the number of driveways per site, the size of a driveway drop curb, and the distance of driveways from street corners. And this is all about reducing the number of driveways because they're a conflict point between pedestrians and vehicles. It's where vehicles cross the sidewalk. And so we really want to reduce them. We do have this way to deviate from this through an staff level administrative adjustment deviation if more driveways or wider driveways are necessary. So I'm not worried that this is gonna, there are certain situations where you do need more driveways, and there's a pretty easy process to allow for that. We also added a standard that if you have multiple parking areas on the same site, they have to be internally connected so that they can all exit via one driveway. And we didn't have standards for loading in service areas, so we added standards for loading docks. And then bicycle parking. We're almost there. Something to know is that we have standards for all bike parking, and then we have standards for, there's two types of bike parking. Short term, which is for like customers coming to a business and it's a U-shaped thing right outside the entrance. And then there's long-term bike parking, which is secure bike parking for residents and employees that want to park for a long period of time or overnight. And it needs to be inside or in a bike locker or in a cage. And so all bike parking, we allow vertical parking where you lift your bike onto the wall, but we added that a portion needed to be horizontal for people like me who can't lift their bikes. And then we also, for when 10 or more spaces are required, we added a requirement that a portion of the spaces are large enough to accommodate large cargo and e-bikes. And then for long-term bike parking, we added a standard that it can't be somewhere where you need stairs to access it. It'd have to be on the first floor or like accessed via an elevator. And then a portion of spaces must be e-bike ready, which is not very difficult. It's just having the electrical so you could have a plug. And then in terms of the number of spaces, we're broadening what use types require bike parking and also how much bike parking they need. And the most significant changes are for long-term bike parking. Right now, we only require one space for every 3 apartments, and we're proposing to require one long-term space per 1 housing unit, which is the same standard we have for vehicle parking. Also right now for commercial uses, how many long-term bicycle parking spaces you need is determined by how many automobile spaces you have, and that's not best practice. So instead, we're using a ratio that other bike-friendly cities use. Okay, last but not least, nonconformities. So in a city where most of our sites are non-vacant, what triggers upgrades to legal non-conforming sites and buildings and uses is hugely impactful. This section is like tucked away in the back of our code and people don't think about it, but it's the most important section of the code, nonconformities. We have this trigger to update certain non-conforming site features. Like parking lot landscaping. When a project comes in, when we receive a building permit of a certain valuation, it was set at, I think, $55,000 in 2023, and then it goes up every year. And we're adding a 10% valuation threshold for upgrades. So it allows somebody to stop having to make upgrades when that threshold is met. So if they're coming in for a $100,000 project under a building permit, they could, for some reason, the upgrades we're requiring cost more than $10,000. They don't have to make all of them. They can stop. To make sure that what we're requiring in upgrades is, proportional to their project valuation. We're also adding an exemption for this trigger for damage repair from disasters, because when people come in for a building permit to repair fire damage, it really feels like we're kicking them when they're down to also then be like, oh, now you have to update your outdoor lighting and your landscaping and other things. So we're adding that exemption. We're also adding a 75% redevelopment trigger for addressing parking placement and access nonconformities. And right now in certain zoning districts like Henderson Center and downtown, we have a 2-story minimum for buildings. And so we're adding this idea that you may expand a 1-story building without it being considered increasing or exacerbating the nonconformity. because I don't want to say no to people who want to add on to their building, because that was the whole point of the 2-story minimum, is to get more development in Eureka. So we're adding that, and then we're also extending how long you can go between uses and keep your non-conforming use status, legal non-conforming use status. So like right now, if a legal non-conforming use stops operating for 6 months, it loses its status. And so if it's no longer allowed in that zoning district, it can't ever reestablish. So we're extending that to 1 year, and then we're allowing for staff to give them another year for good cause, so up to 2 years. Because some buildings in Eureka are designed for certain uses, and those uses are no longer allowed, and then it's a struggle to find another use to occupy that building. So it's always a trade-off between the highest and best use and avoiding vacancy, you know? Anyway, so 3 more slides. Because there was such a long list of changes, Planning Commission had discussions about the changes at 2 meetings in December and January before they had their hearing in February. So after those 2 discussion meetings, we made a bunch of substantive changes based on Planning Commissioner's comments and public comment, which resulted in a very smooth Planning Commission hearing in February, where they voted unanimously to recommend approval of this code update per staff recommendation. And now we're at the public hearing vote, and if council votes to introduce tonight, then we'll tentatively schedule the vote on adoption for the next council meeting. For text amendments to the code, the required findings are that the changes are consistent with the general plan, internally consistent with other provisions of the code, and not detrimental to the public interest, health, safety, convenience, or welfare. We noticed this code update in the Times Standard, on our website and bulletin boards, and we have a mailing list for this code update that I've been mailing to, that some of you are on. And in terms of CEQA, we found that this code update is not only consistent with our 2040 general plan, but it also is needed and furthers implementation of that general plan. So we're able to use this statutory exemption for consistency with the general plan with an adopted environmental impact report. And then we also added the common sense exemption. And here is a recommended motion. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. Okay. So I do say we generally take a break at 8. I'm going to leave it up for consensus to council if you want to take your break now or if you want to do questions first.
I'm okay to continue. I feel like if we do questions, we should also let the public go all the way through the item, just since there's.
We'll go ahead and finish this item before the break. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Questions? Councilmember Moulton.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Director Kenyon, for that thorough presentation. You got through it. It was very informative. I had a couple of questions just to clarify. So if someone has on the topic of vacation rentals, if someone has a VRBO and they don't generate the transitional occupancy tax for a certain amount of time, they could then lose their permit? Am I understanding that correctly?
If council has established a cap for full unit rentals, then this use it or lose it provision kicks in.
Which we currently don't have a cap.
We don't have a cap currently.
Am I correct in remembering the last when we had all these counted, that we were looking at like less than 1% of actual homes being the short term, the vacation rental by owners?
Correct. At most, it's 1.5%.
Okay.
of the housing stock.
So still a relatively small chunk in Eureka itself.
Correct.
Okay. And one other question, if you don't mind. Can you mentioned when you're talking about Henderson Center, or you're talking about the 2-story limit, you mentioned buildings that were built for a use that is no longer allowed. It seemed like you had can you give me an example?
Sure. The Time Standard building across from City Hall, it has this huge area that's windowless, which is where they would print and
Giant printer in there. It was like
and
2 stories
distribute
high, yeah.
newspapers. And so they left, and it was vacant for more than 6 months. And then like a drink distributor wanted to go in there. It was like a warehousing and distribution use, which is no longer allowed in the downtown. That's only allowed in like service, commercial, and industrial zoning districts. But that building is not designed, that part of the building is really, that's what it's designed for. So
how would this then change that?
this would allow for a larger gap in time before a use would no longer become legal non-conforming. So warehousing and distribution, instead of like expiring as a legal non-conforming use within 6 months, now we could give them up to 2 years to find a new tenant for that use type before that legal non-conforming status goes away.
Thank you. I understand now. Appreciate that.
Councilmember Contreras-Deloche.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question about that if there's multiple parking spaces, then they need to be connected. And so I was wondering, you know, in the case of like a residential lot, like for instance, I'm just going to use my neighborhood as an example because we have long, skinny lots. Any kind of ADU or secondary unit, does this apply to that?
No.
This is just for...
does not apply to, it applies to parking lots with like 6 or more spaces, I believe.
But not anything that's going to be down on that lower end.
No.
And then this is actually not my question, but it's kind of, I got an email with a question, and I'm just going to read it because I'm not going to try to rephrase this. The question was regarding tiny homes on wheels, changing street to front lot line in the current section of 155.304.130 Part B4 would mirror the section of the code. So she's asking about corner lots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To allow for tiny homes on wheels on the side of
right, because
when
then
you're
it
on a
would
corner.
be next to that lot line.
I think that's a good suggestion. And if you want to recommend adding that, we could add it.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt that that's going to apply to a lot of properties, but the ones that it would, I think that'd probably be important. Did you get to read it too?
Yeah, and I thought
Okay.
it was a good suggestion.
Yeah, I thought so too. Okay, yeah. Okay. When we do that.
Great. Councilmember Bauer. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Leslie. Or Councilmember Castellano. I didn't see you.
I didn't, but sure, okay. Let's see. My first question was also related to tiny homes on wheels. In that, I think I saw that there's a limit to only one per lot.
Right. You can only have one per lot right now.
Okay. And I guess maybe related to that, because I have a few things that once we get to the other side.
Unless, of course, you get permitted as an RV campground.
Or if it's a shelter spot.
Or if it's an if it's an emergency shelter situation. But as an ADU. So right now they're permitted as accessory dwelling units in residential zoning districts.
Great. But we allow more than that number of ADUs that aren't on
We do.
wheels. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could change it to say that any ADU could be a tiny house on wheels.
Okay, great. And kind of related to this, because I'll have a few, I think we'll all have suggestions on the other side, when we come back to council, to what degree of like numbers of suggestions can we make today and kind of still move forward with the process?
It's almost a city attorney question.
Yeah.
Because if it's too big of a substantive change, we really have to go back to planning commission. But
Yeah,
if
and
it's just
the two that have been discussed so far right now, and City Attorney Black will correct me if I'm wrong, changing the number of or adding the geographical location, I don't think raises to that level of having to reintroduce. like Bob. If they said instead of one tiny home on wheels being allowed per property and changing that to what our current ADU allows for and having those same requirements, that's not substantive enough to say that this needs to be reintroduced.
I don't know because I wasn't involved foundationally in the discussion at the Planning Commission or leading up to it, so I don't actually know how significant that distinction is, an ADU not on wheels and an ADU on wheels. So, I just have a hard time coming down one side or the other with this, no more than this as an introduction to the issue. What I do think, though, is that I don't think the whole project goes back to the Planning Commission. I think an isolated issue could be extracted from this discussion and sent back if necessary.
Yeah, I think the question was whether or not it would need to be reintroduced again and then adopted.
Yeah, if it needed to be reintroduced, I would recommend that we instead go forward with a subsequent amendment to add these other things to the tiny house on wheels provisions of the code.
Yeah, that's another approach, and I think a safe approach, that you'd have an unimpeachable.
I think Councilmember Castellano is confused.
I get what you're saying. I guess that just doesn't give a whole lot of clarity in terms of what kind of changes can we introduce at this point. But we'll just see where we get to on the other side. Let's see. Other questions, but thanks. I get that. Yeah, I mean, at some point we just have to make a call whether it's substantive or not, I guess, and go from there. But let's see. In terms of the required parking question, so much of the city now we can't require parking anyway, and so there's these sort of small cutouts where there's not a major transit stop. Are there? And from what it looks like, most of the areas where we can't require parking are areas that have greater density, whereas the areas where we do require parking have less density. So I'm just wondering, why would we require parking, off-site parking in areas with less housing density, where we don't require it in areas with more housing density?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just didn't feel comfortable, given how controversial parking is, making that change without council direction.
That makes sense. Yeah, thank you. And then I live in a neighborhood commercial district, so I love that. That's my favorite zoning. And so I think just, I was curious, and I have some, I think, minor recommendations there, but, there's sort of what can and can't be in neighborhood commercial, like no office spaces,
to clarify, that's for neighborhood serving commercial uses in residential zoning districts.
Okay.
So traditionally, with modern zoning, we zone places residential and only allowed residences. And whereas historically, there were corner markets that served residential neighborhoods. So we're saying, oh no, we should allow just certain types of commercial uses that are neighborhood serving types of uses in residential neighborhoods.
Okay.
Again, so that people can walk to a coffee shop in their neighborhood or to an awesome restaurant, which is possible in a neighborhood in Eureka. So.
Yeah, great. Yes. And then I guess one sort of clarifying question, just to make sure now I'm understanding that correctly, since I was clearly understanding it incorrectly a moment ago, is there's, on the section around live entertainment, there's a no amplified music qualification. I'm just curious, in a neighborhood commercial zoning, if amplified music is allowed or not allowed?
There's no limitation on amplified music other than our overall noise standards for the city.
Great. Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Bauer.
Yeah, I can't remember where in the 267 pages this is, but I saw there's a neighborhood information meeting when a development is constituted as large. What constitutes large, and should we define that?
it's defined as adding 20,000 square feet of floor area or more. So I think I was looking at the ACGC projects in Old Town, 2nd and E and 3rd and G, and one of those is over 20,000 and one's slightly less than 20,000 square feet.
I just think we've had a lot of spirited discussions about bigger developments. Should we make it smaller, or I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as a point of discussion. I feel like at least having the information meeting would at least let people's voices be heard, but I don't know what that looks like. I'm just throwing it out there for us to think about. Back to the tiny home on wheels. I saw one of the comments was, I think it's a 1-year permit, and someone suggested 3 or 5 years. Why not 3?
So right now it's a no cost annual renewal. And we just did that because it's easier to track. We have we have annual renewals for a lot of different things. And tiny houses on wheels can just roll off a lot and go away. So it's a way for us to keep track of our housing stock. So it could be that we only do it every couple of years, but we aren't charging a fee because we don't anticipate it being difficult, We just want to make sure, we just ask for a picture to see that that has a timestamp, to see that it's still there and that it's still got connections. Because we don't let you just like have a compost toilet or gray water tank. You have to, it's kind of like an RV campground of one. You have to have a little, place to hook up to water and sewer.
No, that clarifies it totally. I'm good with 1 year then. I think that's fine. And then I think my last one on the renewable energy facilities, I think it's page 5. At the bottom of the zoning district box, number 6, it talks about roof-mounted renewable systems and ground-mounted located over a parking area. But let's say there's a parcel that's pretty big. There's a few. I mean, maybe it's dozens or so. Maybe their house can't fit solar on it, and so they want to put it on the ground. Why couldn't that be principally permitted, or wouldn't require a permit?
Yeah, in certain districts, we're requiring a minor or conditional use permit for renewable energy systems. But then we have this caveat that, if it's accessory to a primary use, so if you're just creating energy for on-site use, that counts as accessory, and it doesn't need any special permits. And then we're also saying if it's completely on top of a roof or on top of a parking lot, then no extra permits are required either, even if it's not accessory, if it's adding extra power for, if it's selling power or whatever it is. So that was the reason for that, and why they need a use permit in certain districts. That's a good question. Thinking about like a microgrid where your site is being used for creating energy. Certain districts we were thinking that maybe was more appropriate with a use permit, but or minor use permit. But it's definitely I'm willing to make, I think we could thoughtfully make it even easier. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I was thinking about, is making it as easy as possible for renewable. That's it, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez.
Could you again maybe highlight a few sites here that would be approximately the size of 20,000 square feet? Just if we have anything local that you could compare it to.
Well, like all the affordable housing on city-owned parking lots are mostly like the one right here, it's on 1/3 of an acre, like a 0.3 acre size. So each floor has a footprint in those buildings of about 10,000 square feet.
Okay.
So once you hit more than 2 stories, you would need to come in for a neighborhood information meeting.
Okay.
I want
Like
to
that-
make sure it's 20,000. Did anybody?
Yeah,
see?
you did. You had that on one of your slides.
Okay.
On one of the slides.
And
yeah.
so if you're looking at the difference, so if you look at Rooftop Sushi on 2nd and E there, that one's slightly over 20,000 square feet, and likely because of that Rooftop Sushi at top. If you look at 3rd and G that's being developed right now that doesn't have the Rooftop Sushi, that's just below 20,000 square feet.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'd be open to considering other sizes on which to have a neighborhood meeting then. Yeah. And you'd also touched on home occupation permits. Could you give me some examples of like what type of home occupations we're talking about there?
I just went to my physical therapist today, who was at her home.
Okay.
There's all sorts of different home occupations. We just, it's very limited on how many customers you can have a day, because it's just count. And it has to be at your residence. Like the primary use is your residence, and then you're using it as your office, home office, or whatever, home business site as well. But
And you were saying then that we would be making this so that way it's just one filing, or at least one permit.
yeah, one application that they submit versus two.
Do we have an idea of how many of these type of home occupations we have?
Oh, yes, I do. I just got the number today of how many new ones we got this last year, and I will be reporting on that at our next meeting.
Okay.
But we get a ton. We have hundreds of them.
Okay. And then
It's like people making granola, to like sell. There's all different types.
getting real cottage-core there then.
Yeah,
huh?
cottage
Okay.
industries.
Knife makers too, I believe.
Going back to vacation rentals, one of the clarifications I wanted was you had said there's a 250-foot separation. So whether it was me or my neighbor that had a vacation rental, we couldn't have them next door to each
Full
other.
unit ones. You
Okay.
could have a home share still.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a tricky one. I mean, Planning Commission really they were concerned about over concentration in a particular neighborhood.
Right.
But we haven't yet defined the boundaries of neighborhoods. So I couldn't think of an easy way to, we can't have a cap per neighborhood or whatever. It just seemed easier to have a, 250-foot radius from a site that already has one. But again, it's going to be, an annual renewal tied to the site and the property owner. If it changes hands, then they're back in line if we have a cap, which we don't have.
Which we don't. Okay.
We could also make that, if it feels too draconian or whatever, we could make it so that it only comes into play if we get a cap.
So we could actually codify that language?
Yeah, we
Okay.
could add that if we're feeling like that's too much to base whether you can have a vacation rental on whether your neighbor has one or not.
I would like that in there.
Or we could get rid of that code provision entirely. It's
No,
up to council.
We're good. And then if you could just give me a little bit of a primer too on some of the lighting that you were touching on.
What particularly?
Could we go back to the slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Outdoor lighting.
Yeah.
We have really great outdoor lighting standards, but particularly, Waterkeeper has given us a lot of feedback, and the county just updated theirs. And so we wanted to make some improvements. And one is setting a color temperature.
I think that's what I was wanting more of an
Maximum.
explanation on.
Yeah. So it needs to be warmer.
Okay.
It can't be too white or blue. And there's a whole correlated color temperature thing. I think that we set it at 2,700. I forget.
And so we would be looking at bringing that
It would need to be warmer. It need to go
to that
yeah.
amber non-white color.
Yeah.
Looking to the left of 2,700 on the left graph.
Are we looking at going almost into the red spectrum at that point? Like, are we inviting the wilderness to us? Like, okay. Add stricter. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll open this public hearing. Is there anyone in chambers who'd like to speak on this item? Welcome.
Thank Thank you very much. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to speak. First, I want to thank the city. Updating the design standards and requirements. Yeah, I think you guys were incredibly open. I was getting updates all the time. It was great. I also attended a meeting where the stuff that had been developed, the different roof lines, all that kind of stuff was presented. And as a resident, I loved it all. Absolutely. I think it's great. I love this town and I love that you guys are working so hard. I was talking to some builders though, and one of the things they pointed out that had never occurred to me is by expediting developments that meet those standards increase costs. And so really by default, you are expediting the higher end housing, where developers that are coming in and maybe some of those upgrades are more difficult financially, those are the folks that have to go through the entire process. So ironically, you're making it easier to develop the high-end expensive housing here in Eureka, not so much the more affordable market housing. Something that hadn't occurred to me, I don't know if there's anything you can do about it, but sometimes there are unintended consequences to these things, and you guys might just want to get more feedback on stuff like that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in chambers that would like to comment on this item? Seeing no one, do we have anybody on Zoom? Colin?
Hello again, Mayor and council members. This is Colin Fisk with CRTP. I want to first say that we strongly support the proposed zoning code updates and really thank Director Kenyon and her staff, as well as the Planning Commission, for all of their work on these updates. We are particularly excited about updates to strengthen the standards for pedestrian-friendly building design, as well as for bike parking, to ensure that new homes and businesses really provide secure storage for all kinds of bikes and all kinds of people who ride them. We also strongly support the changes to the development review process to ensure that new housing projects aren't held anymore to sort of inconsistent interpretations of basically vague and subjective aesthetic standards, but instead are held to specific and objective rules. That one change will really make a big difference for infill development, because builders will know from the start what standards they will be held to. In addition to supporting those changes as presented, as you heard, we also are asking that you take the opportunity to add another amendment, which is removing parking mandates for new buildings citywide. As you saw, the code already has substantially reduced those mandates, and they already can't be enforced in a lot of the city, which is great. And it really makes no sense at this point to have them in the rest of the city either. Just for a little bit of context, parking mandates are basically a historical relic that are not based on any objective data. They often require builders to provide more parking than they need. And unlike, say, bike parking, they might make it impossible or financially infeasible to build at all. We saw an extreme example of that, as you will recall, when Measure F proponents tried to increase parking mandates explicitly in order to block new housing. Parking mandates also, I think it's worth saying, constitute a self-fulfilling prophecy of car dependence at a time when our climate and our equity policies really demand a shift towards supporting other modes of transportation. There's growing consensus that removing these mandates may be the single most effective pro-housing and pro-climate reform a community can adopt, and hundreds of communities across the country, including locally Arcata and McKinleyville, are doing that. We just think Eureka should join them. So again, we support the Inland Zoning Code update as presented. Whether or not you address these parking mandates, we think you should adopt it, but we also believe this is a great opportunity to take that next logical step to support infill development by removing these unscientific and costly parking mandates once and for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin.
I see no one else on Zoom.
Great. So we will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for comments. A motion first, a second, and then comment. So you want to make a motion then?
Director, can you put the suggested motion back up? Or Oz, whoever's in charge here.
That's okay. It's just,
rather have a motion out there first. I can.
Oh, Councilmember Moulton.
I move the City Council find the project exempt from CEQA pursuant to the CEQA guidelines 15183 and 15061 and waive full reading, read by title only, and introduce Bill number 1057-CS, an ordinance of the City of Eureka adopting the 2026 Inland Zoning Code update by amending various sections of Eureka Municipal Code. EMC Title 15, Chapter 155, the Inland Zoning Code, adding sections 155.314, Large Site Development, and 155.348, Wireless Telecommunication Facilities, to EMC Title 15, Chapter 155, and repealing EMC Title 15, Chapter 159, Wireless Telecommunication Facilities.
Second.
Great. So we have a motion and second for discussion. Comments? Councilmember Fernandez?
Yeah, sorry. I had a question that I had on another screen. I think you had forwarded us a comment from a member of the public asking about what was it? Transparency, window transparency. Could you address that any? Had to do between the 2 foot and a 3 foot minimum standard for commercial buildings. Yeah.
So a traditional storefront has some opacity at the bottom. It's, an edge, a band, and then it has windows. And so this person was talking about how it's better if the windows are even closer to the ground than 3 feet. They prefer 2 feet or 18 inches. And my response was that this is just a minimum requirement for transparency and you could do more. But then they also pointed out that the figure that we have could be better if it showed the 3 and 7 feet, and they had some suggestions that I liked for updating the figure.
Okay. So that's not something that we generally have to take care of. That's something that you could put into the work itself, or
that's a good question.
Description. Okay. Well, I don't think we have to do anything to amend like the.
No, I think the figures. I mean, if the response was adequate to say that that's a minimum, and if you wanted to, it could be 1 or 2 feet of opacity. But as far as the figures and updating the figures to make them more explicative or more descriptive, I don't see that being.
I feel like that's a non-substantive thing I can do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments?
Answers that.
Councilmember Castellano?
I would like to remove the parking mandates from new buildings citywide. I think that, already in our residential neighborhoods, I mean, for one, we're a pretty built out city, so there's already substantial driveways and parking. And so I think in terms of new development, it would be good to go ahead and do that citywide. I also think that I guess I'm kind of curious, I feel like either we could make some insubstantive changes to the tiny houses on wheels in terms of on the side and allowing 2 and potentially permit for 2 years instead of 1, just because 1 year goes by really fast. To me, those would all be insubstantive and we could do them tonight. But also if there are additional tiny house types of things that people on wheels that people wanted to do, we could also potentially bring back the tiny house on wheels part for a future meeting if there was more than that. This is related to a question, but I may have missed it in the document related to non-conforming uses and because I was looking at the diagram that you put up there, Director Kenyon, and I'm curious, there's some kind of allowances that people can do in order to basically provide alternatives or provide other options if their building has a non-conforming use, like landscaping, or could you give me a little clarity on that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
A very clear question. Just in terms of non-conforming uses, there's if someone I'm trying to understand. I may be misunderstanding. Like,
So in our code, non-conforming uses are treated differently than non-conforming buildings and non-conforming signs and non-conforming site features. They all have different sections. And so the first thing I was talking about was for non-conforming site features.
Okay.
We have these fixie-uppy provisions that if you come in for a large building permit, we require you to upgrade some of these site features that are easy to upgrade without having to, like reconstruct your building, like outdoor lighting and parking lot landscaping.
that is what I was thinking. Okay, great. And I guess I'm curious about, because I don't think I saw it, but is public art one of those upgrades?
We don't have any public art requirements. So if you don't have public art, there's no non-conformity.
I guess I'm just curious if it could be added as a potential upgrade for a building with non-conforming use, like features, to make it. I mean, I guess to.
We don't.
What it is that if there's a standard, for instance, that you have perimeter landscaping around your parking lot, then when you come in for a building permit, we can say, hey, you need to upgrade your parking lot that has no landscaping to current standards. So that's how this works. Whereas like if we had a standard that you needed to have public art on your blank walls, then if you came in for a building permit, we could require you to upgrade to meet that current standard. We could add public art to the infill incentive permit as a qualifying benefit. And I wonder if it's already in there as a qualifying benefit.
I would love to add it if it's not. And then I think the other comment is related to the like community meeting on 20,000 square feet or more. Or, I mean, I just, a community meeting, I want to be mindful of people who are developing these sites, that we're not just basically like setting them up to become like targets for like criticism, because also, community meeting doesn't necessarily mean that the community can change anything at that time. So they may just become a sounding board for, I don't know. It's just something I'd be curious other council members' thoughts on, in terms of, because in my mind I was like, maybe we should move it up to 25,000 square feet. Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Bauer.
No, I think, thinking about this, right? So let's say somebody wants to put in 20,000 square feet and is 30 or 40 units. Maybe we need to be clear that there will be an informational meeting before they, submit 30% design or something, so that the public can have input, because I think that's important that the public be heard, and what they're saying, we're listening to that, or future city councilors are listening to that, So, yeah, I get what you're saying. We don't want to like set everybody up for a showdown, where they're going to get beat up. But I think people need to be heard. So maybe it's something like, I was thinking less square footage, like 10 units or 10,000 square feet, whichever is greater or something. But it happens before they're like ready to go, before we've permitted it.
There is a provision that it has to happen before you apply for your building permit. So you have to do it before you've designed, you have designs for your project.
Exactly. So then they have an opportunity, and for us to listen. And
so hopefully that they haven't already like designed it when they get the input.
Yeah. And so there's that. But I also want to speak to, I think, the parking issue too, because I think that's kind of relatable because of what SB 9's done to, it's like you could put in a bunch of units in a residential area, I mean, more or less. And if we were to say you don't need parking next to, somebody's residential community, also you have 6 new vehicles, because the fact is we're not getting rid of vehicles tomorrow. I mean, we're trying to electrify our fleet in Humboldt County. We have 341 EV charging units, and we need 9,000. So look at how we're doing there. And you think about the realities of living in a rural community. I wish we didn't have vehicles, but the fact is we have to travel most everywhere by some form of transportation, whether we're recreating, shopping, whatever. So I have a hard time with like the social engineering component of that, whereas we're saying this is the way you need to live. So I'm not really into that, just given the current state of how we're moving in development. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Councilmember Contreras-Deloche.
Yeah, I agree with actually both Councilmember Castellano as well as Councilmember Bauer. The suggestions for the tiny homes, I agree with those. Adding those provisions in, allowing for extra tiny home ADU, extending that out a couple of years. That's instead of like you said, a year comes around quick, and then that allowing that corner lot. Those don't seem like those are really huge substantive changes. It seems like little tweaks. But yeah, I was thinking actually the same thing. I was thinking to reduce it down to about 10,000 square feet because I think, again, I don't want to make things harder on developers or anything like that, of course, but I think it's really important to protect those small individual voices and just allow people to have input and feedback on their communities, their neighborhoods. These are where they're making their lives. And I think sometimes there can just be a better, not, like I wrote down, not as a deterrent, but as an opportunity to build goodwill. I think we've seen in other areas that when there's a more robust conversation, a good example of that was, some of the housing that was going in Henderson Center that was for rehabilitative housing. When there was a robust discussion around it, people felt a lot better and there was a lot more buy-in. People changed their mind that night while we were here. So I think I would rather include people in those conversations than exclude them out of fear that a developer is going to be potentially uncomfortable but still can move forward with their plans. I think it's important for small people to have voices too. And then, speaking of the parking thing, I'm also don't want to do that one yet. I definitely want to see that increase in housing. But yeah, I've got a lot of elderly neighbors and I've got this great 4-story senior housing coming in. And it is a topic of discussion, not that people are concerned. Well, yeah, there's a little bit of concern about where's everybody going to park because there are people using vehicles. And one of the conversations that I had with some of the seniors is they're having to travel regularly out of the area for medical care because they can't get it here. So the amount of people that just can't be dependent on transit is actually really high. And I think it's a yes end, but our transit has to keep growing and scaling up before we can just kind of squeak it off.
Councilmember Castellano.
Great. I guess, I do think it's important to hear from all council members, hopefully on some, especially some of these more debatable items. I'd love to get a sense of where we're at. I'm just, I think the ACGC site with rooftop sushi is a great example of something that then would have to have a public meeting. I mean, to me, like part of the purpose of these design standards is to actually create standards that allow the developer to like create a space that like is beautiful or attractive to community need without sort of a lot of like debate around it. I mean, to me, we're sort of like almost adding a nebulous design review process to a project if it's over 20,000, if it's 20,000 square feet or more. I mean, I do appreciate public input and community meetings, but also it's, I just, one, like there's nothing in it that would guarantee that the developer would have to change anything to meet the public input. And so I just think it would create confusion for the community of saying like, we came and we spoke out and then nothing happened, and then would potentially create ill will towards developers or new projects. And so I just don't, I still think minimum 20,000 square feet, if not 25,000 square feet, just to, support things moving forward. I think it seems like I agree with the tiny house on wheels, and just in terms of the parking mandates. I mean, I just think that I do at this point feel like holding the line there, just in terms of, again, like we're already removing any parking mandates from all of these areas. And so we're basically at this point would be saying that, but we still need parking in the areas with the most parking, which to me, there's just sort of a logical fallacy there that I don't think really makes sense.
Councilmember Moulton.
Thank you very much. I've got my little list here. So to the topic of tiny houses on wheels, I support rather than saying one per lot, saying the number of ADUs or equal to the number of ADUs.
I would recommend like any detached accessory dwelling unit can be a tiny house on wheels.
And just so I can,
Because there's already standards for that based on the lot size.
Right.
So we're not just saying blanket, you only get one. We're saying it's going to be based on these other criteria. Yes, city manager.
just so we can clarify the substantive and non-substantive, I had a conversation with City Attorney Black. My understanding of what we're wanting to do with the tiny homes on wheels is to have not a one unit cap for that, but make it applicable to the same standards of other ADUs. And based on, okay, and I'm just saying based on that and our discussion that he agrees that that would not be substantive if that's the case.
Good. Sounds like that's generally agreed upon. Or not that the legality of it, but that particular criteria being changed slightly. Also allowing them on the side of a corner lot, that makes sense to me. The permitting, how long before a permit is required again? What does the permitting process for that look like? Are we talking about like people having to come in and fill out paperwork? Is it a postcard? Can they do it online?
We only have one permitted. They reached out to us when it was annual renewal time. But we would reach out to them, and then they submitted a time-stamped photo showing that it was still there.
So we're looking at once a year somebody taking a picture and emailing it in to prove that to say that there's still a tiny house on wheels there.
Yeah, unless we were concerned about it, then we might send our building inspector out just to check up on it.
I'm really concerned about keeping an accurate inventory of the housing that is available, especially as we try and eke our way up to ever increasing RHNA numbers. Just really keeping an eye on what is actually available. And I don't think that sounds too onerous to do that once a year, as much as I would like to encourage people to have tiny houses. As far as removing parking requirements for the entire city, I don't, and I apologize, this is a dense situation. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know enough about how the parking requirements apply to all the different situations to say that I'm comfortable removing them entirely. I don't, in theory, it sounds reasonable, but I don't know the specifics well enough to say that I'm comfortable making that assertion or that decision right now. I would point out that saying that some people, because there are people in our neighborhoods and in our community who are incapable of using public transportation, to me is a really good reason to make it easier for more people to use public transportation, so that those quick and convenient solutions are like handicap spaces. They're close for a reason. So if there's more parking, there will be more parking available for the people who need it when other people are not having to use the parking because they cannot get around on a bike, or they cannot get around on transit because it's not functional or because it's not safe. So you need to make those things safe, and that should free up infrastructure for the folks who really need to use that, or really need to use a vehicle or rely on a vehicle. And I think I covered everything. Oh, meetings required for developments. Where did the 20,000 square foot line come from? I know you mentioned it. I'm sorry.
Ben Noble, if you're there, can you unmute yourself? Do you see Ben, Shannon?
He's coming up right now.
So where did that 20,000 square foot floor come from? Where did that number, how is that arrived at?
Yeah, as Director Kenyon mentioned, we saw that as a good threshold, so that larger projects that would be more potentially could have more community impacts would be residents would be aware of them. And so I think as the discussion has addressed, you want to be careful that you don't set the threshold so low so that many projects are being subject to this requirement, and therefore kind of establishing a new procedural requirement that sort of might discourage housing production.
So 20,000 just being like anything bigger than that seems large because it's more than a quarter of a block or it's more than half acre. I mean, that's like what, between 20 and 35 units? It depends. It depends on the size of the unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be more of a, considering floor area in a multifamily building that's not used by units, it would probably be more of a 15-unit project.
So this
Like
sounds to me-
ACGC's projects are 13 units each, plus like 2 ground floor commercial spaces.
These sound like very reasonable, relatively small apartment buildings or apartment complexes that should fit nicely into a neighborhood. And I agree that 20,000 would be the baseline for what I would consider a large development. I think that's pretty small for what would be considered a large development. We have to define these terms, right? Okay, so we get all that.
And we can also encourage projects to have neighborhood meetings, which we have done. Like when the brewery got their new site, they held voluntarily a meeting that we hosted for them. And we did that for all of our affordable housing projects too.
So if we were to want to discuss removing parking requirements citywide, is that something we could address later? After some more education, maybe?
Yes. I have heard a lot of good things at this meeting that I will incorporate and add to our zoning code refinement spreadsheet for our next code cleanup amendment, including making renewable energy more principally permitted in more zones. But yeah, those 2 things seem pretty substantive, so I would encourage us to wait on them.
2 things being the parking permit and the
energy. Changing where
but
energy is
the
principally.
details around ADUs and leaving the obviously that's not a change. Okay.
Yeah, all the tiny house on wheels stuff seems like not substantive.
Okay. So can we call the question?
Well, we do have
got
a
one more.
motion and a second.
But
and-
we haven't amended any portion about
Well,
the tiny
you-
homes or the
Exactly.
tiny houses.
So
Houses on wheels.
Oh, sorry. Do we need to make an amendment for that? Okay. Somebody want to do it? Should I do it?
I'd like to make a friendly amendment, adding in council's comments on tiny houses on wheels, related to having them basically have the same standards as tiny houses not on wheels, including. Do I need to say more than that, or does that kind of cover our comments?
The
Or should I add corner
geographical,
lots?
It was
stuff that
any
contraries
detached
to the-
accessory dwelling unit can be a tiny house on wheels, and changing exterior property line to front lot line to allow them inside yards.
That's what I'd like to add as a friendly amendment.
And sorry, I know you're adding friendly amendments, but wasn't it also wanting to increase the timeline as well from 1 year to 2 years?
No.
I don't support that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it
Okay.
seems simple enough. But thank you for that, asking. I'm hearing, and I don't need to make a motion related to bringing back the parking. We'll just that's like okay, great.
That'll be a part of the next zoning code update that
Great.
she'll start working on now and be ready for 2028. No,
I'll
just joking.
start
Just joking.
Just as a point of order, do they need to say with the exclusion of these particular items or not? Not at all.
I think the friendly amendment was related to the ADUs and being applicable to other ADUs, and then the geographical, and that was it.
I
And the only things that
understand
change
that, but I guess what I'm wondering, if you're saying you're adopting it, right, with that exception.
We're introducing it.
We're introducing it.
You're not adopting the parking and you're not adopting the other pieces.
That was not added as a friendly amendment.
Mention that.
I understand that. It's in.
I don't need
It's
to-
in the document.
The
No,
discussion was about changing.
Is
Oh,
it-
sorry.
No, what I'm saying to you is that you were saying that you wanted to remove the parking for a later date. Did I hear you
No.
incorrectly?
No.
Or you do want to just add that and keep it how it is? Okay.
We're
I
going
just
to keep
hear
it
you.
as it is.
There's no change to the parking, and that
Didn't hear you correctly.
topic's
We're
going to
good.
come back at another time.
Okay. So carry on, Councilmember Castellano.
You got your
That was it.
Okay, yeah, I got I'll agree to those friendly amendments.
Great. So we have a motion and a second with those friendly amendments.
We need our second to agree.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I guess.
Please vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
All right, we're going to take a short break, probably 5 or 6 minutes. As the Eureka City Council meeting this day, March 3rd, 2026. And this moves us to the consent calendar. All matters listed under this category are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. Pursuant to City Council Resolution 2011-22, if a member of the public would like an item in the consent calendar pulled and discussed separately, the request shall be made to a council member prior to the meeting. Unless a specific request is made by a council member, the consent calendar will not be read. There will be no separate discussion of those items. And no one has brought anything forward to me? So can we get a
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
thank you? Second?
Second.
Oh, thank you. Please vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Great. That brings us to legislative action correspondence. Councilmember Bauer?
Thank you. Let me just get my notes together here. I have 2 bills for us to, I hope we will consider sending letters of support. AB 1761, author is Assemblyman Rogers, our Assemblyman. And it's one of those not very, for some probably wouldn't consider it very exciting, but the goal is that there's a thing called the power charge indifference adjustment, which keeps going up and up and up every year. And the investor-owned utilities, the IOUs, don't have to tell us how they come up with this number, essentially. And so price of actually providing electricity is actually going down this year, but the PCIA is going up. And so the goal is that the IOUs will have to report what constitutes that cost. Why are you wanting us to chart? And we know what it is. It's a depreciation of their assets. So gas powered plants are going down. They're losing their value because they're getting less use, because we're going to renewables. And so they want to charge the ratepayers with that, and they keep raising it every year. So his goal, it's a very simple bill so far, is to require them to tell us what is involved in that cost of the PCIA. It doesn't cost us anything. It's more of letting us know what we're actually paying for. Just introduced recently. It'll probably change a lot. Who knows if it'll survive, but I think it's worthy of our support and for our citizens. Okay. And then one more here for tonight, SB 895. This is a bill. It's called the Science and Health Research Bond Act. And so state scientists are trying to get this bill to basically, if the bill passes, it'll establish a proposition which would establish a fund to, quote, establish a foundation to fund scientific research to the tune of about $23 billion in bonds, so that paid out over time. But the goal is, well, I'll say this, it's a recognition of the federal government not really funding scientific research, or at least not what we all consider to be, science in the truest form. That's the simplest way to put it. But just trying to get onto the ballot for us to vote on to continue to support our science at the state level, and coming up with new vaccines and ways to treat illnesses. So it's kind of a Pollyanna view. It's a hopeful thing that we can continue to fund science without federal involvement, and recognizing that federal funds are kind of not there anymore.
So to clarify, is this for medical only, or is this just for scientific research broadly?
No, it's for all broadly.
Just a broad.
Yeah.
broad
So
brush.
it, again, kind of a long shot, but I think the more we all support such an initiative, hopefully they can survive and the voters will approve.
1, 2,
do you
3,
think?
4, 5.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
We have consensus. Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes. I have one, and it's likely not to be on anyone's radar just yet. Assembly Bill 1984, corporate powers. I'm sure we're all familiar with Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission from just, 15 years ago. So our Assembly member, Chris Rogers, and co-authored by our state senator, Mike McGuire, this bill would specify that the powers for corporations to engage in ballot issues or election activity would no longer exist within the state of California. This is actually based on something that they're attempting to move to ballot in Montana. So I would ask that we support this, since I believe that this is something that, as a country, we've been asking for the better part of a decade.
So would that be also a letter?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
We've got the consensus. Anything further?
Corporations are not people, and money is not speech.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Fun fact, true fact. Let's see. Ordinances and resolutions, the 2025-26 mid-year budget with Finance Director Millar.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council, and everybody in the audience. So tonight's report is on the fiscal year 25-26 mid-year budget. As part of this report, we're going to quickly look back at fiscal year 24-25 at the general fund and compare budget to actual to kind of see where we started the year, at least when it comes to reserves or fund balance. We're going to look at current year, fiscal year 25-26 revenues, including sales tax trends, current year expenditures, and then we're going to talk about our fund balance policy. So to begin with 24-25 budget versus actual. So the original budget for fiscal year 24-25 showed a $1.1 million deficit, but halfway through the year, things changed a bit. Revenue went from about 43 million down to 41.8 million. This was due to a transfer of the Cape and Care operations, as well as their funding source or their grant funding. So revenue didn't really go down that much overall. It just got shifted into a new fund. The same with expenditures. That big drop was mostly driven by the fact that we were removing those two divisions out of the general fund. But ultimately, the deficit shrunk quite a bit, down to about $800,000. And then now when we compare to the actual figures for fiscal year 24-25, you can see that that deficit went in the other direction, and we ended the year with roughly $500,000 in surplus. The reason that you saw that positive variance, the positive variance is a good thing, is because when we looked at revenues, ultimately we saw a $500,000 increase due to what is called the Redevelopment Agency residual payments. So the former redevelopment agency had a lot of debt obligations, and as those debt obligations get paid off, and one did get paid off a couple years ago, we start to see more payments of regular property tax. That resulted in the $500,000 increase, and then we saw another $250,000 of increase in the charges for services category. there's a lot of line items that account for charges for services. The biggest driver in this category was the zoo admissions. So I budgeted about 1.8 million in zoo admission, and we ended the year at about 1.9. So overall, we saw a positive revenue variance of about $800,000. On the expenditure side, the fact that we spent less than we had anticipated really came down to one line item, and that is the monies that we transfer for street projects. For the 2024 pavement project, the engineering department got a grant, which reduced the total cost by about $600,000. So given the fact that both revenues and expenditures saw positive variances, this kind of changed the overall picture and added about $500,000 to our reserves. So at the beginning, or in July of 24, we started the year with about 11.7 million in reserve, and then adding another $500,000. We started this July of 25 with about $12.2 million. And how that relates to our policy on fund balance, you can see that as a percent of expenditures, 12.2 million represents about 29%, which exceeds the policy's threshold of 25%, and we have a little buffer of about 3.9%. So that's it for the good news. So current year revenues. So the original 25-26 budget for revenues was about 42.4 million. We're estimating that at the end of June, that number will grow slightly to about 42.6 million. The reason for this positive variance kind of has to do with that property tax, or the redevelopment agency property tax. With that history, I was confident enough to increase those line items by roughly $250,000. And then we did see about 30,000 of net increase in other line items. But we also had some decreases. We were anticipating a new rental agreement that would bring in about $100,000 a year to the general fund, but unfortunately, due to a delay, we don't expect that agreement to be executed this fiscal year. So anytime I talk about general fund revenues, I like to pull up the pie chart, because the one thing this really shows us is that we're very reliant on one type of revenue, and that is sales tax. So when I have these opportunities to report on the budget, I do like to bring up sales tax, or focus on sales tax, because beyond being our the majority of our revenues, it also tells us what's going on in the economy. These are taxable sales that happen at all the local businesses, and when you realize that when business is good, we receive more tax revenue. When business is bad, those numbers go down. So that's the reason for the detour. So looking back 5 years, what you see here is our three sales tax revenue types. We have our Bradley Burns. Every municipality receives the Bradley Burns. That's the 1% of our 10.25% rate. And then some cities, like City of Eureka, also has district taxes. That includes Measure H at 1.25% and Measure D at 0.25%. And you can see that I've stacked those revenues on top of each other to show you the overall trend. Since fiscal year 21-22, we've actually seen total sales tax decrease by just under $1 million. And since fiscal year 23-24, this revenue has remained flat, and the projections show that it's likely to continue to remain flat. We are not unique in this situation. This graph shows us what's happening with our neighbors. So this graph is a little different. It just shows the Bradley Burns portion. And the Bradley Burns portion is a little bit unique because it captures what is happening in the store. Our district taxes tend to capture transactions that happen online too, so it's not a good barometer for what's happening at the local business. The top line is Eureka in red. Below that, the county of Humboldt in purple, and then Arcata and Fortuna. The other cities do receive sales tax, but it's an amount that's so small that it throws off my graph. So just starting at the top, you can see and this is calendar year, not fiscal year, but you can see that Eureka saw a decrease of about $900,000 to the Bradley Burns portion of sales tax. The county of Humboldt saw a $1.7 million decrease, which is relatively large, given that they bring in about half as much sales tax as we do. And then the two other cities, they've remained fairly flat for the last 4 years. When I add up all the sales tax collected by these agencies since 2021, you can see how dramatic that decrease has been. So from between 2024 and 2021, these agencies have received about $2.9 million less. And because it's 1% of taxable sales, that implies that we've seen $290 million of taxable sales go away in the county of Humboldt. This shows us why economic development is so important up here, because most of the agencies rely on sales tax to keep their operations whole. And until we see a turnaround in the economy, we're likely to see flat or very low growth in this category. So moving on to current year expenditures. So we began the year with the estimate of about $43.2 million. Our current estimate is about $46.3 million, representing a $3 million negative variance. So the reason for the variance, well, there's quite a few reasons. We're going to first look at things that are more operational. So the first line item is the budget or personnel budget update. So even though we do anticipate salary savings for vacant positions, certain line items have gone so far over or are projected to go so far over that despite those savings, we expect to pay about $550,000 more in personnel costs. The one bright spot is that because we issued our lease revenue bond in August, that this year and only this year and the final year of the bond will see partial payments. So even though I budgeted for a full payment, what we'll end up paying this year is about half of what we'll see in the future. Looking at current year actuals and then comparing certain line items to what happened in the prior year, I estimate about $300,000 in increase in those expenditure line items. And then due to a delay in executing a contract with the county, we'll need to subsidize the care operation to the tune of about $450,000 this year. Last fiscal year, we had to use $360,000 to make their operation whole using local funds. So until we have a contract with the County of Humboldt, CARE will continue to require a subsidy for operation. So now we're going on beyond operations, and we're looking at more capital items. The one good thing about the capital items is that it's one and done. Once we're done with the project, then the pain stops. It doesn't continue like things in the operational side. But as you can see, a number of capital projects went over budget. So that will require about $1 million to cover that hole. And then due to the replacement of the marine fueling facility on the waterfront, an emergency project, we'll have to draw down about 1.2 million in fund balance to pay for that project. So the combination you see right here is why we see that $3 million increase in expenditures.
Sorry, this is a good place for us to extend the meeting. So if you'll just give me can we get a motion to extend the meeting?
I move to extend the meeting until 10:15.
Second.
Please vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Carry on, Director Millar. Thank you.
So now that we've reviewed revenues and expenditures, you can see the effect on the bottom line. We began the year anticipating a $800,000 deficit. Unfortunately, that deficit is now likely to be roughly 3.7 million. And how does that affect fund balance? So at the end of the year, or when we adopted the budget, we thought we would end the year with about 11.4 million in fund reserve. Despite the decrease, we would still stay above the policy threshold. But unfortunately now with the large decrease, where we potentially end the year at about 8.5 million in fund balance, we're going to fall below the threshold by about 6.6%. And when we're below the threshold, the requirement of the policy is that we or staff brings back a plan to build back reserves within 3 years. So this is something the council can expect come budget time. So as we're doing the fiscal year 26-27 budget, we will be looking for ways to reduce our expenditures. Maybe there are some revenue options, but those are few and far between. So we're going to do our best to balance the budget, if not strive for a surplus. And that is all.
Do we have any questions for Director Millar? Councilmember Castellano?
Thank you for the report. I was curious in terms of the contract with the CARE. I assume that's happening soonish?
So we just came to a final agreement with it, and it was routed today for internal signatures, and then it's going to go back to the county. We're not sure if it needs to go back to the supervisors. Right now, the agreement only contains staff signatures from the county, so we sent an email just before this meeting to see whether or not it needs to go back to the supervisors, and didn't hear back. But from staff's perspective and the city's perspective, it's done. And it's pending the signatures for the county.
Okay, great. And will that contract allow us to pay back expenditures that have already happened or only going forward?
No, it does not.
Okay.
The agreement currently is just to get reimbursed. We tried to, that's part of the reason why the negotiations went so long, is because we were trying to get a lump sum contract from them forever. The first year we were under the impression that that was possible. Then through the second year that eventually led to the third year, we were told that they only do it based on reimbursements. So all of their service contracts are based on reimbursements. And so we only get funding through reimbursement from Medicare.
Okay, thank you. And then the marine fueling facility, I totally understand that's a kind of one-time, or, well, not one, but, once in a long while expense. We make income off of that facility as well?
It's very limited. We get quarterly payments from the operator of it, of the facility. So yeah, it's not like we're paying this with the intention of being reimbursed through those payments. I don't know, quarterly we get a pretty nominal amount from England Marine that operates the facility.
And so our improvements were somewhat subsidizing a private operator, or?
No, that property is ours. We've owned the fueling station since day one. It's very similar to owning the fish processing plant or any other facility. We own it, and then we lease it out to an operator to operate. So we receive quarterly payments. If we were to operate it with our own staff, which probably would not pencil out because of the wages that we pay, we could generate all the revenue that we wanted from that. But it's similar to us running the public hoist or running the fish processing plant or running any of the facilities that we lease out to private companies.
Yeah. Okay. It's a pretty large, I mean, I definitely, for the record, support the fishing industry, and, but it's, it's a pretty large investment in one sector that, we don't necessarily make for other sectors. And so I'm just kind of curious.
Well,
in terms of,
it was a regulatory issue.
Okay.
If the regulations hadn't changed, that single-walled tank would still be underground, and we would have never had to make those improvements. It's very similar if we had a building that needed earthquake retrofits in order to have inhabitants in it, we'd have to make those earthquake retrofits.
Sure. I mean, also people usually, again, I'm just kind of like poking at this question just because it is a big economic impact, right? In terms of now we have, we're below our variance for some time, in terms of like, is it something that we need to kind of relook at the rates we charge for rent, or for lease of that facility or anything like that?
So this one's really unique. It's very similar to the public hoist that we have. You typically do not. So for the public hoist, what we do is we get a certain small percentage per pound of offloaded fish that gets offloaded by the hoist operator. So we get a certain percentage of their revenue quarterly from the gas that they sell. There's not a month-to-month rent lease on it. It's based on that we get return for funds, and that goes back into the harbor fund.
Okay. And would it make sense to increase that percentage?
We could. I'd have to look at their lease. I'm pretty sure it ends in 2030, but I could double check on that. But that lease has been in place. It's with England Marine, who used to be there. Prior to that, they've been the operator for decades. So we could look at that for sure. I think one of the issues we have, similar to the ice plant and similar to the public hoist, is finding an operator that has the ability to maintain it. That's one thing that benefits us significantly when the dispensers have issues, when they have issues that are routine maintenance, they have the staff with the knowledge and ability in order to fix it. Our current staff doesn't, and finding another operator that could do that, I think with the fueling facility would be more likely, but some of these other ones are much more difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Just things to think about. And then, do we need to do anything new in terms of just like employee recruitment, just to support having a more just employees available?
I think we've done really well in that. As a matter of fact, I think we've done better than since I've been here for 20 years in all of our departments. That's for sure. I think that's what Director Millar is talking about when we look at this plan that we're going to come back to council with about how to get the reserves up to where they need to be. That's with the idea that we're still going to be able to give COLAs to our employees that we've done for the past 6 years, I believe, and make sure that we can keep that in place so that we can maintain our retention. That will be the goal that we have when we come back with you guys it will be not only to balance the budget and make it so that we can replenish our reserves, but also keep in mind that we're going to need cost of living increases after this next increase that we get in June.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Contreras Deloche.
So you'd said earlier that and I can't remember how you put it, but when we dip below a certain level, it automatically triggers that you guys need to come back with a plan of how we're gonna get. Can you remind me how you put that? What is that?
So in the policy, the stated goal is having 3 months or 90 days or 25% of your expenditures as reserves. So anytime it falls below that 25% or 90 days, then you have to, or the finance director has to make a plan to, over 3 years, to try to get fund balance to get back to at least that 25% or above.
Do those plans typically include a, so I would assume that's not only to pay back whatever happened in that particular year, but it's to prevent that from happening in future years as well?
I don't know if it's kind of like you fell below your threshold that you set, so you need to make some sort of effort to acknowledge, one, that you're going in the wrong direction and you should plan to start moving in the opposite direction because things just get worse and worse. It doesn't require that the city makes any changes necessarily, but it does, it's a helpful mechanism where if you're struggling, that you need to, staff has to make an attempt to make things better.
Yeah, I guess more to the point is, so, you know, and I know I've been beating this drum for a few years. So I think the scenario that I'm talking about, and maybe this is a question for city manager as well, is if we continue to decline, if we continue to drop in this area, and so this isn't just, you know, I don't think this year is an anomaly. I think this is, you know, here we are, but this is where we've been headed actually for a few years. So if things continue to decline, and so we make this plan, this 3-year plan of how we're going to deal with this deficit that we're running for this calendar year, but then the next calendar year also dips, the next year dips, or fiscal year, excuse me, and these continue to kind of decline. What I guess what I'm asking is that just continuing to roll 3 more years to address 2025 and 2026, and then 3 more years to address 26, 27, and then 3 more years? Is that compounding if that were to continue?
Technically, yes. If
Yeah,
the
but-
trends overall are continue to go down, and if I produce a report, I'm going to acknowledge that there's a clear direction in the trends.
Yeah.
And that you have to essentially pull back even further to accommodate the fact that, you know, your revenues continue to stay flat or decline.
I think that's like what I would like us, or, you know, I think my concern is that, you know, I want to make sure that we don't have this like rolling, like how do we, you know, I want to come up with, I would like to know that we have a plan, or that we're going to come up with a plan now for, you know, how do we rein this in this year, and how do we kind of look at this going forward, so that we don't end up rolling, and then it turns into something that's kind of larger. I would rather us kind of address it and make an assumption, like you said, this trend, right? It is a trend. So like that we're going to make a plan. I feel like, not to call out the county, but I don't see there being necessarily this projection forward of like, how are we going to address this problem if we just continue to have less revenue? And I feel like we've been really fortunate. I feel like we've got great staff who really watches this stuff really closely, and our department heads watch things closely. And so I feel like we're good there. I want us to have a realistic idea of just how intensely we need to kind of address it and go in on it, so that it doesn't become this like rolling mess that, you know, snowballs, because I want our employees to feel stable. I want things to be as stable as possible, and I don't want there to be, you know, in 3 years, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's
worst
why
case scenarios.
Director Millar was emphasized expenditures. If you look at what's been projected, we've been anticipating, similar to what you're saying, revenues going down. As a matter of fact, last year we were under projected. We actually had higher revenues of 85, that's something, a slight bit that was a little bit higher. We're not expecting to see higher revenues. We're expecting that we're going to lessen our expenditures in order to fix this problem. I don't see us projecting fiscal year 26, 27 having higher revenues than we had. I think as it's been the last 3 years, it's been relatively flat. And so we'll project along those lines, but it's the expenditure side that needs to be addressed. And if
Right.
we do one fiscal year and it turns out that we have more unexpected emergencies and stuff like that, that means that we'll need to tighten our belt even more the following fiscal year in order to account for those.
Yeah, and I mean, when I was looking through the list, I mean, some of these things were definitely, like there were emergencies, but and I realized that some things can't be planned for, like overtime, or different things like that. But it wasn't all of it that was just unplanned expenses. It was, other things as well. And I mean, I know there's nothing we could do about the county put us in a really bad spot with us not having this contract. And that's not a good situation that got drag out as long as it did.
And that's one area that we don't know. That's an unknown for the revenue. We're pretty sure that we'll be able to balance the overall cost to recoup money. That's still a possibility, depending on the number of calls for service and how many we can report and what we get reimbursed for. So there is a possibility on that of being, but it's not going to break the bank. I mean, if we're looking at that deficit of $500,000, I think that we'll be able to get that operationally from year to year. But whether or not we can get more than that to make up for some of the other costs we have, we don't know. But we're not having that expectation on the revenue side. It's making sure that the expenditure side is dropped to.
Yeah,
be
I
equal with
agree. It's the expenditure thing that I'm concerned about. Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we'll open this item up to public comment. Is there anyone from the audience, from the public, who would like to comment on this item? Seeing no one, is there anyone on Zoom?
I see no one on Zoom.
I'll bring it back to council for a motion second and any more discussion. Councilmember Bauer?
Thank you. I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution of the City Council amending the fiscal year 2025-26 adopted budget.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Are there any further comments on this item? Seeing none, please vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you. This moves us to Bill number 1055 CS, Administrative Hearing Procedures with City Attorney Black. Thank you,
Yes,
Director
Mayor.
Mueller.
This is the adoption. It was introduced at the last meeting, and it's before you with no changes.
Are there any questions for City Attorney Black? No. Seeing none. Councilmember Contreras Deloche?
Would this include this? Would this eliminate something like the card permit appeal that we heard?
No. So right now, this is just setting up the process as Deputy City Attorney Holt discussed last time. This is setting up that process, determining which of those functions this process will be used. Will be coming back to you guys.
Okay, thanks.
At a later date.
Okay. If there are no further questions, we'll open this item up to public comment. Anyone in the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Is there anyone on Zoom?
I see no one on Zoom.
So we'll bring it back to council for a motion, second, and discussion.
I move to waive full reading, read by title only, and adopt Bill number 1055 CS, an ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 10 of the Eureka Municipal Code, adding sections 10.110 through 10.118 to establish uniform administrative hearing procedures and set the ordinance for adoption at the next regular city council meeting.
Second.
Motion is second. Is there any comment on this? Please vote.
Just, sorry, question. This is our second reading of this.
Yes.
So aren't we
Correct.
adopting it or no?
You are adopting it, but it's 30 days before it goes into effect, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Five yes votes, motion carries.
Great. This takes us to Bill number 1056 CS, Eureka Energy Committee with City Manager Slattery.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Similar to the previous item, this was introduced at the last meeting, and there is no request for any changes, so it's in front of you now for adoption. If there's any questions, I'm available.
Questions? Seeing none, we'll open this to public comment. Does anyone from the public like to comment on this? Seeing none. Anyone on Zoom?
See no one on Zoom.
We'll bring it back to council for a motion. And a second. Councilmember Fernandez?
I move that we waive full reading, read by title only, and adopt bill number 1056 CS, an ordinance of the City of Eureka, deleting Title 3, Chapter 33, Eureka Energy Committee sections 33.065, 33.066, 33.067, and 33068.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any comments? Please vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Future agenda items. Councilmember Castellano.
This is somewhat on the topic of future agenda items, but I think it would fall into this category. Sorry. I'm curious. Okay, everybody knows it's I'm closing in on my last year on council, but so I'm kind of curious just in terms of like what's the schedule of future agenda items, and also relatedly like sort of what are the ones on, like sometimes I lose track of the ones that have been brought up over the last year, and so just sort of like what's the stack, like where are we on queue as future
I have
agenda
my
items?
list.
What?
You're wondering what the queue is for the future agenda items that have been
and
requested
it'd be
before.
great to just kind of see a list of like what's on the list, because
Okay.
we don't know, like maybe I should be like writing them down every week so I can remember, but sometimes I lose track.
I write them all down, and I can provide that. Do you want me to go through what I have?
Do it right now.
Okay, so I can send that out to council about what we have on the docket just related to future agenda items, and I'll send that out to council, and with a guesstimate as to when they'll be brought forward.
But yeah, even just like sort of the general order in which we might be hearing them.
Thank you. Councilmember Contreras Deloche.
Yeah, along those lines, I just wanted to get an update. In October of 2025, I had brought up the Emergency Streets Protocol. We all thumbs up it. And then in January of this year, we also discussed it, January 7th. And I just was wondering where that was at, especially in light of our discussion around traffic accidents tonight.
So that was one of the ones on my list, and this Operation 101. We wanted to get further in development into that, and then the engineering department will look into the Emergency Streets Protocol and see what kind of overlap that there is with that, and then also I have an understanding of our complete streets and what we're doing with complete streets. So we've been discussing that at department head ever since.
Could you clarify? I'm sorry, I was asking for a timeline, and that was a lot, and I just wasn't totally clear. It seemed like you were saying it was dependent on a lot of other moving parts.
It wasn't, well, it's somewhat dependent. We didn't want to overlap with the Operation 101 because there's a lot of stuff about safety related to that. And then the Emergency Streets Protocol, the engineering department wants to look into what they're doing as it relates to,
Complete streets.
Complete streets. And so they're looking into that, and I will put a timing on that when I send out the group email with all the other future agenda items.
Yeah,
so timing wise, I can't give you an exact date. I'll need to talk to the engineering department more.
Okay. I mean, it's did anybody get a chance to look at because I know you'd reached out to me in January to see, to look at the link and stuff like that. You had requested that. Because usually it's kind of PD related, traffic enforcement related, and so I just.
Well, there's a lot of engineering. The vast majority of it is engineering and not enforcement related. So that's why it's
after there's an accident,
and that's why it's in engineering. So when we were looking at it initially between the October and November date in January, the link wasn't working, and that's when I contacted you. And then when we went back and looked at it, the link was working. And so since then, they've been looking into that, and we'll add that to the list and give a better date on when it'll come forward.
Anything further? Well, seeing none, we will move to city manager reports. ADU financing program update.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, Mayor and Council. So this has been a long time coming, and I want to introduce Special Project Manager Topolewski, who's been assigned and is working with this with our housing folks and our finance folks, and he's going to give an updated project timeline for it, as well as where we're at in the process and what you can expect to see coming in the near future. Thank you, Project Manager Topolewski.
Thank you. Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Like Miles mentioned, I'm Riley Topolewski, Special Projects Manager, and I'm here to talk about an exciting project, the Eureka Builds It Accessory Dwelling Unit Financing Program. Before I get started with the presentation, I just wanted to throw some kudos out to Swan Asbury, our Economic Development Manager. She brought us this far, and I'll be taking over for her. So without further ado, how do I advance it? Is it down there?
Right one.
There it goes. Off to a smooth start. So the Eureka Builds It Accessory Dwelling Unit Financing Program. Our goal is to increase housing by providing assistance to property owners at every step of the ADU process. Another goal is it's going to be a primary collaboration between planning, building, and finance departments with a few other players involved. Eureka Builds It aims to increase ADUs in Eureka and streamline the process by providing a current list of design professionals, simplifying the permitting and construction process, and providing financial incentives for homeowners wanting to build ADUs. Eureka Builds It is a unique opportunity because, as we all know, Eureka needs more housing. On that note, there are approximately 6,000 single-family residential properties in Eureka, all of which will accommodate some type of ADU. And on a positive note, ADUs can add much-needed housing without drastically altering the character of Eureka that we know and love. To be eligible, you must be a homeowner in Eureka. Your property must have sufficient space for an ADU and must comply with local zoning laws. Looking at the framework, there's 4 phases. Phase 1 being the site analysis and financial capacity. Phase 2, the design and permitting. Phase 3, construction. And Phase 4, permanent financing. Jumping into Phase 1, site analysis and financial capacity. An applicant will work with development services staff to explore every potential ADU development option for their specific site. Simultaneously, the applicant will be working with the finance department staff to complete a mortgage pre-approval to help determine a financial capacity. Phase 2, the design and permitting, would see staff will provide an applicant with a pre-approved list of design professionals. And development services staff will assist with the building permits and any other permits that may be required. Finance staff will do a second financial review prior to the construction phase, which is Phase 3. During the construction phase, the applicant will identify a contractor and have them complete our Eureka Builds It checklist. Building staff will provide periodic inspections before payments are made. And the construction phase would conclude with the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. The final phase, Phase 4, involves rolling over into permanent financing. Upon completion of construction, finance staff will begin the refi process. And then based on the HUD income limits, the applicant may be eligible for low rate subsidies or principal forgiveness. The cost of staff time will be added into the financing package, and the finance department will identify multiple financing sources, levels of subsidies, and options for applicants. Diving further into the financing aspect, the objectives are to provide development opportunities to individuals who cannot obtain traditional financing, to use subsidies as an incentive to encourage affordable housing options, and to minimize the financial risk to the city by maximizing outside sources of financing. To illustrate those outside sources of financing, we have this handy dandy little slide that shows some of the various outside options, such as the Housing Trust Fund, the PLHA, CDBG, Home, which is a state, Cal Home, and then our local funds, all of them going towards the program. So the financing tools, we are going to offer low interest rates, principal forgiveness, and in some cases, a combination of the two. Next steps, we have a document, an RFQ ready to go out for the design professional. And if you look towards the bottom of this slide, you'll see our tentative timeline with the RFQ being released on March 16th and wrapping up on the 27th of April. We're also going to construct build a construction checklist that will be available to selected contractors to make sure they're meeting the requirements of our ADU program. And then the finance department will identify multiple financing sources, levels of subsidies, and options for applicants. And with that, we're available for some questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Castellano?
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much. Really excited for this program. I know one of the challenges in the past has been, finding a bank that, once it's right, it's hard to get a loan on something that hasn't, like an ADU that hasn't been built. But once it's built, then perhaps people can, it can kind of turn over to more traditional financing. Have we had some success then in terms of finding some local financial partners?
So I think Director Millar can speak with this, but we have been speaking with, I believe, Coastal Central Credit Union, and they've been interested in helping with that. But I think those other financing options are also out there, whether those be CDBG or Home or Cal Home or something like that, that once they get it, we can maybe roll it over into those type of programs. But yes, we plan on working with local banks to try and get, once it's built, they have the equity, have them get a regular loan from them and pay back ours. Now, we're trying to incentivize it so that there's still a possibility for forgiveness and all the other options, but we're using all the options that are out there.
Great. And then in terms of, it seems like probably the Builders Exchange is a good place to sort of help broadcast this call for proposals, basically from along with other folks. But
so the RFQ will be for design professionals, not necessarily contractors. In discussing this with our contract attorney, doing an RFP for contractors for this program specific for it was not the correct route to go. What we plan on doing is working with her and developing a checklist. And so when we get these applicants, they come in, they pick from the design professionals. When they bring in a contractor, that contractor, they can pick from whoever they want, but they'll have to meet certain criteria of this checklist in order to be able to qualify to do the
And
building.
a design professional is an architect, or?
Can be an architect, can be a design, draftsman, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Cool. And so all of that's in the RFP, and I can send out the RFP that's already developed right now, and it lists the criteria for you to apply, and then everybody who qualifies under that RFP will be listed as an available option for applicants.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Anything further? Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we still have 13 minutes left. What should we talk about? We could. Get our kumbayayas out. I'm just kidding. We're adjourned.
I was going to do Rainbow Connection.